I thought I was hallucinating when I opened my front door at 7 in the morning to find my parents and golden child brother Marcus standing on my doorstep demanding I host his wedding reception in my backyard next weekend. The same parents who threw me out at 18 for refusing to give up my college scholarship to work in the family restaurant. The same brother who stood silent while they called me selfish and ungrateful. Now they needed my beautiful suburban home because their original venue fell through, and they expected me to say yes, like nothing happened. My coffee mug nearly slipped from my trembling fingers as I stared at the 4 people who had made my teenage years a living nightmare. There was my mother Elainer, perfectly coiffed even at this ungodly hour, wearing her signature pearl necklace, and that familiar expression of entitled expectation. My father Frank stood beside her, his weathered hands clasped behind his back like he was inspecting restaurant equipment. Marcus lounged against my porch railing with his usual smirk, and beside him stood a blonde woman who could only be his fiancée. Ava, sweetheart, we need to talk, Eleanor announced, brushing past me into my foyer without invitation. The scent of her expensive perfume filled the space I had worked so hard to make my sanctuary. Frank followed his steel-toed boots tracking morning dew across my hardwood floors. Nice place you got here, kiddo. Real nice. Marcus sauntered in with his fiancée, both of them scanning my living room like appraisers evaluating property. The blonde extended a manicured hand. Hi, I'm Brittany. I've heard so much about you. That was a lie. Marcus had probably never mentioned me except to complain about my absence from family gatherings I was never invited to. Oh, what do you want? I managed, clutching my bathrobe tighter around my body. My therapy sessions had prepared me for potential family contact, but not this kind of ambush. Eleanor settled onto my cream-colored sofa without permission, spreading her purse and coat across the cushions. There's been a terrible emergency with the wedding venue. The country club had a kitchen fire and we're completely without options. The reception is next Saturday, Marcus added, examining my entertainment center with calculating eyes. We've got 200 guests expecting a garden party atmosphere. Brittany wandered toward my sliding glass doors, peering out at my carefully landscaped backyard. This space is absolutely perfect. Look at those flower beds and that gorgeous patio area. My stomach dropped as understanding dawned. You want to have the reception here. It's not want, honey, it's need, Frank said gruffly. Family helps family during emergencies. The audacity took my breath away. These people had cut me from their lives completely when I chose education over restaurant servitude. For 8 years, I had heard nothing from them except occasional guilt trips delivered through distant relatives at grocery store encounters. We've already handled most of the arrangements, Eleanor continued cheerfully, pulling a folder from her oversized handbag. The caterers, the musicians, the photographer. All we need is your beautiful space and your gracious hospitality. You can't be serious. I sank into my reading chair, the familiar comfort of my chosen furniture grounding me. You threw me out for choosing college. You told me I was dead to this family. Marcus rolled his eyes. That was years ago, Ava. People grow and change. Besides, this is my wedding day we're talking about. Your wedding day that I learned about 30 seconds ago. Brittany turned from the window, her blue eyes bright with excitement. Oh, Ava, please say yes. I've been dreaming of an intimate garden celebration, and this backyard is absolutely magical. Those rose bushes would be perfect for photographs. Eleanor leaned forward, her expression shifting to practiced vulnerability. Sweetheart, I know we've had our differences, but family is forever. Your grandmother Helen always said the most important thing was keeping the family together. The manipulation was so smooth, so familiar that I felt 16 again. Grandmother Helen had been dead for 3 years, according to the obituary I had seen in the newspaper. No one had bothered to inform me of her passing. Besides, Frank added, it's not like you're using this place for anything important. Must get lonely in this big house all by yourself. The casual cruelty in his tone reminded me exactly why I had spent thousands on therapy to heal from their emotional abuse. My home represented everything I had built without them. Every mortgage payment had been earned through my marketing consultancy, every piece of furniture carefully chosen to reflect my personal taste rather than family expectations. "I need you to leave," I said quietly. Eleanor's mask slipped slightly. "Excuse me?" I said, "Leave. Now." Marcus pushed off from my mantelpiece, his expression darkening. "Come on, Ava. Don't be dramatic. It's one day. One day I'm not hosting." The room fell silent, except for the tick of my antique clock, a gift I had bought myself after landing my first major client. Then Eleanor smiled, and I knew something terrible was coming. "Oh, honey," she said sweetly, "I'm afraid it's too late for that. We already sent the invitations with your address as the reception venue. The entire family is expecting to celebrate here next Saturday." The blood drained from my face as Eleanor's words sank in. "You did what we had to act quickly," she replied, smoothing her skirt with false casualness. "Time was of the essence with the venue change. Everyone understands emergencies happen." My hands began to shake. "You sent invitations with my address without asking permission." Brittany looked confused. "But Marcus said you already agreed to help with the wedding planning. He told me you were excited to be part of everything." I stared at my brother, who had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. I never said any such thing. "I may have mentioned you'd probably be willing to help out," he muttered, avoiding my gaze. Frank crossed his arms. "Family doesn't need formal invitations to help each other out." The familiar gaslighting made my vision blur. This was exactly how every family conflict had played out during my childhood. Marcus would create problems, our parents would enable his behavior, and somehow I would be responsible for fixing everything while being blamed for any resistance. "Let me tell you what family means in this house," I said, my voice growing stronger. "Family means showing up to high school graduation. Family means congratulating someone on their college acceptance. Family means not disowning your daughter for wanting an education." Eleanor's expression hardened. "You chose to leave Ava. You chose your selfish ambitions over family responsibility." "I chose Northwestern University over working in your failing restaurant." "That restaurant supported this family for 20 years, Frank snapped. "And where is it now?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "We ran into some financial difficulties." "You mean you ran it into bankruptcy within 2 years of me leaving?" "The market changed," Eleanor said defensively. "The economy was difficult." I had heard through the grapevine that Marcus had tried to modernize the restaurant with expensive renovations and trendy menu changes that alienated their regular customers. He had borrowed heavily against the property and equipment, confident that his charm could attract the younger demographic. Instead, he had hemorrhaged money while destroying the loyalty their parents had spent decades building. "So now Marcus works where exactly?" I asked. Brittany answered proudly. "He's between opportunities right now, focusing on developing his next venture." Translation: unemployed and living off our parents' rapidly dwindling savings. "And somehow, this makes me responsible for hosting his wedding." Eleanor stood abruptly, her composure cracking. "You have always been jealous of your brother's happiness. Even as children, you resented his natural charisma and social abilities." The accusation was so backwards, it would have been funny if it weren't so hurtful. Marcus had been the golden child who could do no wrong, while I had been the responsible one expected to clean up his messes and enable his mistakes. I wasn't jealous. I was exhausted from covering for him constantly. "That's not how I remember it," Marcus said. "Of course not. You were too busy getting bailed out of every consequence to notice who was doing the bailing." My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced down to see a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, Ava. This is your cousin, Jennifer. So excited about hosting Marcus's reception. Grandma Helen would be so proud of you bringing the family together. Can I bring anything to help with setup?" My stomach lurched. "How many people did you tell?" Eleanor smiled triumphantly. Everyone who matters. Your Aunt Patricia was so touched that you volunteered your beautiful home. Uncle Robert said it shows real maturity and family loyalty. Another text appeared this time from a number saved in my contacts. Ava, it's Sarah from high school. Heard you're hosting a big wedding reception. Why didn't you mention it when we had coffee last month? I'm so excited to see your house. Sarah Chen. We had maintained a casual friendship over the years, meeting for coffee every few months to catch up on life and work. She had never met my family, and I had never told her the full story of why I was estranged from them. You told Sarah Chen, "We may have mentioned it to a few mutual acquaintances," Eleanor said vaguely. "Word travels quickly in small communities." The manipulation was breathtaking in its scope and cruelty. They had created a web of social obligation that made refusal seem petty and selfish. Family members who barely knew me would now see me as either generous or cruel, with no context for understanding the years of emotional abuse that led to my departure. Brittany was back at the window gesturing excitedly. "Marcus, look at this pergola. It would be perfect for the ceremony backdrop. We could string lights and flowers everywhere." "We're not having the ceremony here too," I said quickly. "Well, actually," Eleanor began, "the church had some scheduling conflicts with the new date." My living room felt smaller with each passing moment, filled with the energy of people who saw my home as their temporary property rather than my personal sanctuary. The casual way they discussed rearranging my space and life brought back memories of childhood invasions when my bedroom was never truly private and my belongings were fair game for Marcus's whims. "I built this life specifically to get away from all of you," I said quietly. Frank looked genuinely puzzled. "But you did good for yourself. College paid off. You got this nice house, steady income, time to give back to the family that raised you." The twisted logic made my head spin. Success meant I owed them everything, while failure would have meant I was a disappointment who needed their support. Either way, I existed to serve their needs rather than my own. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was my therapist's office reminding me about my appointment next Thursday. The irony wasn't lost on me that I would be discussing family boundaries just days after this ambush. Eleanor noticed my phone and smiled knowingly. "See, people are already reaching out with excitement and support. It would be such a shame to disappoint everyone now." The emotional manipulation intensified as Eleanor pulled out her most effective weapons. Tears began forming in her eyes, her voice taking on the tremulous quality that had controlled my childhood decisions for years. "Ava, sweetheart, you have to understand how desperate we are. Marcus and Brittany have been planning this wedding for 8 months. 200 people have already made travel arrangements." She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue that had materialized from her purse with practiced precision. "Your grandmother, Helen, always said family comes first. She would be so disappointed to see us fighting on what should be the happiest day of Marcus's life." The invocation of my dead grandmother was particularly cruel since I had been excluded from her funeral. I had only learned about her death through a casual mention in the local newspaper's obituary section, discovering that the woman who had taught me to bake cookies and helped with homework had passed away 2 weeks earlier. Frank stepped forward, his expression shifting to cold intimidation. "People are going to ask questions when this wedding gets canceled. What do you think that's going to do to our family's reputation in this town?" "Your reputation stopped being my concern 8 years ago." "Well, maybe it should be your concern now," he said grimly. "Small towns remember when people turn their backs on family during times of need. Might affect your business when word gets around." The threat was unmistakable. They were prepared to destroy my professional reputation to force compliance with their demands. Marcus tried a different approach, his voice taking on the wounded tone he had perfected as a child. "I thought maybe you'd grown up enough to put the past behind us. I guess I was wrong about you maturing." Brittany looked genuinely distressed. "I don't understand what's happening. Marcus told me you were excited to be part of our wedding. He said you'd been asking about ways to help. I stared at my brother. When exactly did I ask to help with your wedding? You didn't specifically ask, but I figured you'd want to be involved. It's not like you have much else going on. The casual dismissal of my life and career stung more than I expected. In the 8 years since leaving home, I had built a successful marketing consultancy from nothing. I owned my house, outright had savings in the bank, and maintained professional relationships with clients across 3 states. But to Marcus, none of that mattered because I wasn't married and didn't have children according to their traditional timeline. My phone rang, startling everyone. The caller ID showed my high school friend Sarah. "Answer it," Eleanor commanded. "Tell her how excited you are about the reception." I declined the call, but a voicemail notification appeared immediately. Against my better judgment, I played it on speaker. "Hey Ava, it's Sarah. I just got off the phone with your mom, and I'm so confused. She said you've been planning this amazing garden reception for months, but you never mentioned anything when we had coffee. I'm really hurt that you didn't tell me about such a big family event. I mean, I know we're not super close, but I thought we were friends. Anyway, call me back. I want to help with decorations or food or whatever you need." The message ended, leaving uncomfortable silence in my living room. Eleanor smiled victoriously. "See, Sarah is hurt that you've been so secretive about your generous offer to host. Now she thinks you've been hiding your family reconciliation from your friends." The manipulation was masterful. They had created a narrative where I was the lying, secretive person who had somehow orchestrated this entire situation while pretending innocence. Anyone who heard Sarah's message would assume I was being dishonest about my level of involvement. "What exactly did you tell Sarah?" "Just that my daughter was graciously hosting her brother's wedding reception after years of family estrangement. I may have mentioned how proud we are that you finally put childish grudges aside to embrace your family responsibilities." Brittany pulled out her phone, scrolling through what appeared to be a planning app. "I hate to interrupt, but we really need to finalize some details. The caterer needs a final head count by Wednesday, and we haven't confirmed the music setup." "There is no music setup," I said firmly. "Oh, but there has to be," she replied, showing me her screen. "Look, I have everything organized. Cocktail hour from 5 to 6 dinner service, from 6 to 8 dancing until midnight. Marcus's friend Tyler is going to DJ, and we need to know where to set up his equipment." The casual assumption that my home would be transformed into a party venue for 7 hours made me physically nauseous. They weren't just asking to borrow my backyard for an afternoon. They wanted to take over my entire property for an entire evening, treating it like a rental hall they could modify according to their needs. Marcus was examining my living room with renewed interest. "We'll need to move some of this furniture to create a dance floor, and we should probably cover these white walls with decorations so they photograph better." "Nobody is moving my furniture." Eleanor sighed heavily. "Ava, you're being unnecessarily difficult about details. This is supposed to be a celebration, not a negotiation over every little thing." My phone buzzed with another text, this time from Uncle Robert. "Eleanor told me about your generous offer to host the reception. Very mature of you to put family first. Helen would be proud. Let me know if you need any help with setup." Then another from Aunt Patricia. "So excited for Saturday. Haven't seen the whole family together in years. Should I bring my famous potato salad?" And another from Cousin David. "Mom said you volunteered your place for the reception. That's awesome. Can't wait to see what you've done with the house." Each message felt like another rope in the trap they were weaving around me. Family members who had never reached out during my years of estrangement were suddenly treating me like a beloved relative who had magnanimously offered to host a major family event. "How many people did you contact?" Frank shrugged. "Everyone who needed to know. Can't have a family wedding without the family." The scope of their deception was becoming clearer. They hadn't just sent a few casual mentions to close relatives. They had conducted a systematic campaign to create social pressure from every possible direction, ensuring that refusal would seem cruel and inexplicable to people who only knew the fabricated version of events. Eleanor stood and smoothed her skirt clearly, feeling that victory was within reach. Now that everyone understands the situation, we should start discussing practical arrangements. The rental company will need access to your backyard Thursday morning for tent setup. What rental company? Brittany looked up from her phone with surprise. The one for tables and chairs. Will need seating for 200 people plus serving stations, a gift table, and the dance area. I never authorized any rental company. Marcus rolled his eyes. Come on, Ava. You can't host a wedding reception without proper seating. Be realistic. The word realistic triggered a memory of countless childhood arguments where my reasonable objections to unreasonable demands were dismissed as unrealistic or dramatic. It was their favorite way to make resistance seem childish and silly. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Answer it, Eleanor said expectantly. Against my better judgment, I picked up. Hello. Hi, is this Ava Johnson? This is Mike from Party Perfect Rentals. I'm calling to confirm delivery details for this Saturday's wedding reception. My blood went cold as Mike from Party Perfect Rentals continued speaking. We have you down for tent delivery Thursday morning at 8 a.m. along with tables, chairs, and a dance floor. Just need to confirm access to your backyard. I never ordered any rentals, Durham, I managed. Oh, Mike sounded confused. Well, I have a signed contract here with your name and address. Payment authorized by Eleanor Johnson as event coordinator. Should I call her instead? Eleanor was watching me with a satisfied expression, clearly having expected this call. There must be some confusion, she said loudly enough for Mike to hear. Ava's just having pre-event jitters. Everything is confirmed as planned. No, I said firmly into the phone. I did not sign any contract and I am not hosting this event. Do not deliver anything to my address. Ma'am, I understand you might be stressed, but we have a binding contract and significant cancellation fees if you back out now. Let me transfer you to our management team. I hung up my hands, shaking with rage and panic. You signed contracts using my name. Eleanor looked genuinely surprised by my anger. Well, someone had to handle the logistics. You weren't returning our calls. Because I didn't know you were calling, I changed my number years ago. Frank pulled out his phone. We got your new number from Patricia. She had it from that time you called about Helen's birthday party. That had been 3 years ago, and I had called Aunt Patricia to politely decline attending a celebration for a grandmother who was apparently too sick to see me, but healthy enough for a party. Patricia had clearly saved my number and shared it without permission. You forged my signature on legal documents. Marcus waved dismissively. It's not forgery. You're family. Besides, we knew you'd agree once you understood the situation. The casual admission of fraud was stunning. They genuinely believed that family relationships gave them the right to commit identity theft and enter into contracts on my behalf. My phone started ringing again. This time it was a florist. Don't answer that, I warned, but Eleanor grabbed my phone before I could stop her. Hello, this is Eleanor Johnson, mother of the bride and event coordinator, she said cheerfully. Yes, Ava is here, but she's a bit overwhelmed with all the details. Can I help you? I lunged for the phone, but Frank blocked me while Eleanor continued her conversation. Absolutely, the centerpieces should be delivered Friday afternoon. White roses with baby's breath exactly as discussed. Ava will be here to receive them. She ended the call and handed my phone back with a smile. See how much easier everything goes when we work together as a family. The violation felt profound and personal. My phone contained my entire professional and personal life, and she had just answered it like she had every right to represent me to vendors and clients. I'm calling the police. Brittany looked alarmed. Police? Why would you call police to a family discussion? Because identity theft and fraud are crimes. Eleanor laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. Oh, Ava, always so dramatic. You can't seriously think of involving law enforcement in a family matter. Frank stepped closer, his voice taking on a threatening tone. That would be a real mistake, kiddo. Think about how that would look to everyone who's expecting to celebrate with us Saturday. I don't care how it looks. You should, Marcus said coldly. Sarah already thinks you're being weird and secretive. Uncle Robert is telling everyone how proud he is of your maturity. Cousin Jennifer is driving 3 hours to be here. You really want to be the person who ruins all of that over paperwork details? The emotional blackmail was suffocating. They had constructed a scenario where any reasonable response to their fraud and manipulation would make me appear unstable and selfish to people who only knew their fabricated version of events. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Hi, Ava. This is Jessica Chang from the Valley Tribune. Your mother reached out about featuring your family's wedding story in our Sunday lifestyle section. The theme of family reconciliation and homecoming sounds wonderful. Could we schedule a brief interview this week? I stared at the message in horror. You contacted the newspaper. Eleanor beamed proudly. Jessica is such a sweet girl. She's very interested in the story of a successful daughter coming home to embrace family values after years of pursuing individual ambitions. You told a reporter that I was pursuing individual ambitions. Well, you were. College career, this house. All very individual-focused rather than family-centered. The way she framed my education and professional success as character flaws rather than accomplishments was breathtaking. In their narrative, my independence and self-sufficiency were problems that needed to be corrected through renewed family obligation. Brittany was back to scrolling through her planning app, oblivious to the emotional warfare happening around her. Oh, I forgot to mention, my maid of honor, Hannah, needs to drop off her dress tomorrow for steaming. Is that okay? No, it's not okay. None of this is okay. She looked confused and hurt. I don't understand why you're being so resistant. Marcus said you loved planning parties and events. I turned to my brother. When exactly did I tell you I loved planning parties? He shrugged uncomfortably. You don't have to explicitly say something for people to figure it out. You have a nice house, good organizational skills. It's obvious you'd be good at hosting. The assumption that my personal abilities belonged to them for exploitation was typical Marcus logic. Throughout our childhood, anything I was good at became something I was expected to do for him. High grades meant I should help with his homework. Artistic talents meant I should make his school projects. Social skills meant I should smooth over conflicts he created. My phone rang again. This time I recognized the number as my business partner Jake's office line. I have to take this, I said, walking toward my kitchen for privacy. But Eleanor followed me clearly, intending to monitor and potentially intercept another conversation. Make it quick, Frank called after us. We still have a lot of details to work out. I answered the call while Eleanor hovered inches away from me. Ava, hey, Jake's voice sounded confused. I just got the strangest call from a woman claiming to be your business manager. Something about event planning services and venue rental rates. My stomach dropped. What woman? She said her name was Eleanor Johnson and that you were expanding into wedding and event planning. She wanted to set up a meeting to discuss partnership opportunities and revenue sharing. Eleanor smiled innocently while I processed the implications of her latest manipulation. Jake, I'm not expanding into event planning and I don't have a business manager named Eleanor Johnson. Okay, that's what I figured, but she seemed to know a lot about your client list and current projects. She mentioned the Henderson account and the Morrison campaign by name. How could she possibly know about those accounts? Eleanor's smile widened. A mother knows more about her daughter's life than the daughter realizes. The invasion felt complete now. Not only were they demanding my home and personal space, but they had somehow gained access to confidential information about my professional relationships and were using it to manipulate my business partnerships. Jake, ignore any communication from that woman. She's not associated with my business in any capacity. Got it. But Ava, how did she know those client names? That's not public information. I stared at Eleanor, who was examining my kitchen cabinets with the same calculating expression Brittany had used on my backyard. I'm going to figure that out and call you back. I hung up and faced my mother directly. How do you know about my clients? Social media is very informative these days, she replied casually. You post pictures from client events and mention project successes. A careful reader can learn quite a lot. It was plausible, but felt incomplete. My social media presence was carefully curated and professional, focusing on general business success, rather than specific client details. Marcus wandered into the kitchen, opening my refrigerator and helping himself to a bottle of water. Nice setup you've got here. Professional-grade appliances. This kitchen could handle serious catering preparation. Get out of my refrigerator. Relax, it's just water. He took a long drink while surveying my kitchen like he was planning renovations. Though we might need to rearrange some stuff Saturday for the catering setup. Where do you keep your extra tables and chairs? I don't have extra tables and chairs for 200 people. Brittany appeared in the doorway. That's okay. The rental company is bringing everything. We just need workspace for food preparation and serving. The casual assumption that my kitchen would be commandeered for commercial food service made my skin crawl. They were discussing my home like it was community property available for their use and modification. We should probably do a walkthrough with the caterer tomorrow, Eleanor suggested. Make sure they understand the layout and available resources. There is no caterer coming to my house tomorrow. Frank joined the kitchen crowd, making the space feel claustrophobic. Course there is. Can't have a wedding without proper food service. We hired the best Italian place in town. They do a nice buffet setup with carved meats and pasta stations. My phone buzzed with yet another text message. Hi Ava, this is Tony from Marcello's Catering. Your mother asked me to confirm tomorrow's kitchen walkthrough at 2 p.m. Looking forward to working with you on Saturday's event. The trap was closing around me with mechanical precision. Every vendor, every family member, every business contact was being systematically enrolled in their fabricated reality, where I was the willing, enthusiastic hostess of this unwanted celebration. Eleanor pulled out her own phone and began scrolling through what appeared to be a comprehensive contact list. I should probably call the musicians to confirm their arrival time. The quartet will need space to set up and do sound checks. What quartet? Classical strings for the ceremony and cocktail hour, then Marcus's friend Tyler takes over for dancing. Very elegant combination of sophistication and celebration. The wedding was expanding beyond a simple reception into a full-day takeover of my property and life. Ceremony, cocktail hour, dinner service, and dancing until midnight. 12 hours of my home being occupied by people I had spent 8 years avoiding. Brittany was taking pictures of my kitchen with her phone. This lighting is gorgeous for photos. Hannah and I can get ready here while the guys use the basement. Nobody is getting ready in my house. Marcus rolled his eyes. Where else are we supposed to get ready? It's not like we have a bridal suite at the country club anymore. The entitlement was breathtaking. Not only did they expect venue space, but they assumed access to my private living areas for their personal preparation and convenience. My phone rang again. This time it was Amanda Kingsley, my biggest client and the president of a regional nonprofit organization. I had to answer. Amanda's account represented 30% of my annual income. Hi, Amanda. Ava, congratulations on your expansion into event planning. Your mother called this morning about your wedding and reception services. I had no idea you were branching out. My legs nearly gave out as Amanda's words sank in. Eleanor had contacted my most important client to pitch fictional wedding planning services. My professional relationship with Amanda was built on trust, reliability, and clear communication about my marketing expertise. Now, Eleanor had muddied those waters with lies about business expansion and services I didn't offer. Amanda, there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not expanding into event planning. Oh, your mother seemed quite knowledgeable about your capabilities. She mentioned several successful events you've coordinated and said you were looking for corporate clients. I stared at Eleanor, who was casually examining my spice rack while clearly listening to every word. My mother isn't associated with my business in any capacity. Any communication from her should be ignored. That's strange. She knew details about our upcoming fundraiser and suggested ways your event planning services could complement the marketing campaign you're developing for us. The blood drained from my face. Information about Amanda's fundraiser was confidential, shared with me under strict privacy agreements. Eleanor shouldn't have known anything about that project. I need to call you back, Amanda. There's something I need to investigate immediately. Of course. But Ava, I hope everything is all right. Your mother made this sound like an exciting business opportunity. I hung up and turned to face my family with growing fury and panic. Eleanor smiled serenely. Amanda seems lovely, very impressive nonprofit work. How do you know about the Henderson fundraiser? I may have done some research on your professional activities. Frank stepped closer, his expression turning aggressive. Maybe the better question is why you're being so secretive about family involvement in your success. We raised you, supported your education, taught you the values that made you successful. The rewriting of history was stunning. They had actively opposed my education and cut me off financially the moment I chose college over restaurant work. Every achievement in my professional life had been earned despite their sabotage, not because of their support. Marcus opened another cabinet, examining my dishware with proprietary interest. These plates would be perfect for the rehearsal dinner. We'll need settings for 30 people tomorrow night. What rehearsal dinner? Brittany looked surprised. The rehearsal dinner, traditionally held the night before the wedding for immediate family and the wedding party. Which is happening where? Here, obviously, Marcus replied. Where else would we have it? The whole point of using your place is keeping everything contained and convenient. Eleanor pulled out her phone and began reading from what appeared to be a detailed schedule. Rehearsal dinner tomorrow from 6 to 9 p.m. Kitchen walkthrough with caterers at 2 p.m. Florist delivery Friday afternoon. Tent setup Thursday morning. DJ sound check Friday evening. Each item on her list represented another invasion of my personal space and time. They had planned a week-long takeover of my property without my knowledge or consent. Nobody is setting up tents in my backyard. Frank laughed grimly. Little late to worry about that now, kiddo. Rental truck's already scheduled for 8 a.m. Thursday. Gonna be hard to explain to the delivery guys why they should just turn around and leave. My phone started buzzing with a series of text messages. Ava, it's Jennifer. Mom said you need help with decorations. I'll be there Thursday afternoon with flowers and ribbons. Hi, Cousin Robert here, bringing the folding chairs from the church basement. Should be there by 10 a.m. Thursday. Ava, this is David. Mom asked me to handle parking coordination. How many cars can your street accommodate? Each message revealed another layer of family mobilization. They had created an army of well-meaning relatives who believed they were helping with a joyous family celebration, rather than participating in an elaborate manipulation scheme. The doorbell rang, causing everyone to freeze momentarily. Are you expecting someone? Eleanor asked. On Tuesday morning? No. Marcus peered through the front window. Looks like a delivery truck. My stomach lurched as I walked to the door, followed by my unwanted family entourage. Through the peephole, I could see a uniformed man holding a clipboard and several large boxes. I opened the door cautiously. Can I help you? Delivery for Ava Johnson. Wedding centerpieces from Bella Flora Design. Behind me, Brittany squealed with excitement. Oh, wonderful. I was hoping they'd arrive early so we could see how they look. I didn't order any centerpieces. The delivery man consulted his clipboard with confusion. I have an order here placed by Eleanor Johnson for delivery to this address. 25 table centerpieces, altar arrangements, and boutonnieres. Eleanor stepped forward smoothly. That's correct. I'm Eleanor and this is my daughter Ava. We've been coordinating the wedding details together. No, we haven't, I said firmly. I didn't authorize this delivery. The delivery man looked between Eleanor and me with obvious discomfort. Ma'am, I just deliver what's on the order form. Says here payment was processed and delivery confirmed. By whom? Eleanor Johnson, listed as event coordinator. Eleanor smiled at me with false sweetness. Ava, you're embarrassing this poor man. Just sign for the flowers so he can get on with his day. The manipulation was masterful. Refusing to accept flowers for a wedding would make me appear cruel and unreasonable, while accepting them would constitute acknowledgement that the wedding was actually happening at my house. I'm not signing for anything. Brittany looked genuinely distressed. But these are my wedding flowers. I spent hours choosing the perfect arrangements. The delivery man shifted uncomfortably. Look, I don't want to get in the middle of family business, but I need someone to sign for these, or I have to take them back to the shop. Frank stepped forward with authority. I'll sign for them. Family matter, like you said. So the delivery address is specifically for Ava Johnson at this residence. I can only release them to her or an authorized representative. Eleanor pulled out her phone. Let me call Bellaflora and clear up this confusion. She dialed while maintaining eye contact with me, clearly expecting me to capitulate rather than endure further public embarrassment on my own doorstep. Hi, this is Eleanor Johnson calling about the wedding centerpiece delivery to Ava Johnson's address. Yes, there's a small confusion about authorization. Can you confirm that I'm listed as the event coordinator with signature authority? She listened for a moment, her expression growing triumphant. Perfect. Yes, she's here now. She handed the phone to the delivery man. Bellaflora wants to speak with you directly. The delivery man took the phone reluctantly. Hello. Yes, this is Mike from delivery. Uh-huh. Okay, I understand. He handed the phone back to Eleanor and turned to me with professional resignation. Ma'am, the flower shop confirms that Eleanor Johnson has signature authority for all deliveries related to this event. I'm authorized to leave these with her if you prefer not to sign personally. The trap was perfect. Either I signed for flowers I didn't want, or Eleanor signed for them with official authorization she had somehow obtained through fraud or manipulation. How did you get signature authority? Eleanor's smile was victorious. When you place a large order and provide credit card payment, most vendors are happy to accommodate reasonable requests for delivery flexibility. You use my credit card. Don't be silly, dear. I used my own credit card but provided your address as the delivery location. Standard practice for event planning. Brittany was examining the flower boxes with growing excitement. Oh, these look gorgeous. Can we take them inside to see how they look with your table settings? No. Marcus rolled his eyes. Come on, Ava, they're just flowers. Stop making everything so complicated. The delivery man was clearly eager to escape the family drama. If everyone's comfortable with Mrs. Eleanor signing, I can get these unloaded and be on my way. Eleanor was already reaching for his clipboard. That sounds perfect. I watched helplessly as she signed for 25 table centerpieces, altar arrangements, and boutonnieres that would presumably sit in my house until Saturday's unwanted celebration. The physical presence of wedding decorations in my home would make the entire situation feel more real and irreversible. Where would you like these, ma'am? The delivery man asked Eleanor. The living room will be fine for now. We'll arrange them properly later this week. He began carrying boxes into my house while my family stood aside like this was perfectly normal. My living room, the space I used for reading and relaxation, was being transformed into a wedding decoration storage facility. After the delivery man left, Eleanor clapped her hands together with satisfaction. Well, that's one item checked off our list. The flowers really are beautiful, Brittany. My phone rang again. This time it was a number with a local area code I didn't recognize. Hello. Hi, is this Ava Johnson? This is Mrs. Thompson from St. Mary's Ladies Auxiliary. Your mother mentioned you might need volunteers for Saturday's reception setup and cleanup. I closed my eyes in defeat. She did. Oh yes, we're so excited to help with such a beautiful family celebration. Eleanor made it sound like quite the homecoming story. We love supporting family reconciliation in our community. Eleanor was watching me with obvious pleasure, clearly having expected this call. Mrs. Thompson, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not hosting a reception on Saturday. Oh dear, did I get the date wrong? Eleanor said Saturday evening for Marcus and Brittany's wedding celebration. The date isn't wrong. The event isn't happening. There was confused silence on the other end of the line. But Eleanor specifically asked for volunteers from our auxiliary. She said you were overwhelmed by the scope of the event and could use help with table setup, serving, and cleanup. We have 12 ladies ready to assist. 12 church volunteers had been recruited to help with an event I had never agreed to host. The social pressure was becoming astronomical. I need to call you back, Mrs. Thompson. Of course, dear, but we'll need to know soon if you don't need our help. Some of the ladies are rearranging their Saturday plans to be available. I hung up and stared at Eleanor with a mixture of rage and admiration for her manipulative skills. 12 church volunteers. Community support is so important for major family events, she replied serenely. Everyone wants to help when they understand the beautiful story of family healing. Frank was examining my entertainment center with renewed interest. We'll need to move this furniture anyway for the dance floor. Good time to give those church ladies something useful to do. Nobody is moving my furniture. Marcus laughed. Ava, you can't have a wedding reception in a living room arranged for television watching. Be practical. The word practical triggered another childhood memory of being told my objections to unreasonable demands were impractical and selfish. Brittany was kneeling beside the flower boxes, carefully examining the contents. These are even more beautiful than I hoped. The white roses are perfect, and the baby's breath adds just the right amount of texture. She looked up at me with genuine gratitude. Thank you so much for letting us use your house, Ava. This is going to be the perfect wedding. The sincerity in her voice made everything worse. Brittany clearly believed Marcus's lies about my enthusiasm for hosting. She had no idea she was participating in an elaborate family manipulation scheme designed to force my compliance through emotional blackmail and social pressure. My phone buzzed with another text message. Ava, it's Pastor Williams from St. Mary's. Eleanor asked me to reach out about officiating the ceremony in your backyard Saturday morning. Beautiful setting for a family wedding. Can we schedule a brief meeting to discuss logistics? The text from Pastor Williams made my hands shake as the full scope of Eleanor's manipulation became clear. She hadn't just planned a reception takeover, she was orchestrating an entire wedding ceremony on my property. The casual mention of Saturday morning logistics suggested they intended to occupy my home for the better part of 2 days. Before I could process this latest violation, my phone rang with a number I recognized as my business partner, Jake, calling back. I need to take this, I announced, walking toward my home office for privacy. But Eleanor followed me again, clearly determined to monitor every conversation. Jake, thank God you called back. Ava, I've been getting more calls about your supposed event planning expansion. A woman claiming to be your mother contacted 3 of our potential clients about wedding and corporate event services. My stomach dropped. Which clients? The Morrison Campaign, Henderson Industries, and most concerning the Sullivan Foundation. She knew specific details about our proposals and suggested ways event planning could enhance our marketing packages. Each of those accounts represented months of careful relationship building and confidential strategic planning. Eleanor had somehow accessed private information and was using it to manipulate my professional network. Jake, I need you to send immediate clarification emails to all 3 accounts explaining that I am not expanding into event planning and that Eleanor Johnson is not associated with my business in any capacity. Already on it, but Ava, how did she know those details? Some of the information she shared wasn't even in our written proposals. I stared at Eleanor, who was casually examining my office bookshelf. I'm working on figuring that out. There's something else. She mentioned having experience in restaurant management and hospitality, and suggested that our marketing firm could benefit from her operational expertise. She's trying to insert herself into my business. It sounds like it. She also asked about our client retention strategies and revenue projections, very specific business intelligence questions. Eleanor smiled at me while continuing to browse my professional books and certificates. Jake, implement our security protocols immediately, change all shared account passwords, and review our file access logs. You think she's been accessing our systems? I think she's capable of anything. After ending the call, I turned to face Eleanor directly. How did you know about the Sullivan Foundation proposal? A mother pays attention to her daughter's success stories. You've mentioned several impressive clients over the years. I haven't spoken to you in 8 years. How could I have mentioned anything? Her mask slipped slightly. Social media provides a wealth of information about someone's professional activities. My social media doesn't mention specific client names or proposal details. Frank appeared in my office doorway. Seems like you're getting pretty paranoid about normal family interest in your career. Breaking into my business communications isn't normal family interest. Marcus squeezed past Frank into my already crowded office space. Nobody broke into anything. Mom just did some research to understand your work better, shows she cares about your success. The gaslighting was seamless. My legitimate concerns about privacy invasion were being reframed as paranoia and ingratitude for their supposed support. My phone rang again. This time it was Amanda Kingsley calling back. Ava, I've been thinking about our earlier conversation. Your mother left quite an impression during our call this morning. Amanda, I need you to understand that Eleanor Johnson has no connection to my business whatsoever. I see. Well, regardless of family involvement, she raised some interesting questions about event coordination for our fundraiser. Questions that suggest deeper strategic thinking about donor engagement. My blood went cold. What kind of questions? Venue psychology catering as relationship-building entertainment choices that reflect organizational values. Very sophisticated understanding of nonprofit event planning. Eleanor was watching me with obvious satisfaction while Amanda continued. She also mentioned your family's restaurant background and suggested that hospitality experience could enhance our donor cultivation strategies. Amanda, any information Eleanor shared about my background or capabilities should be disregarded. She doesn't represent my professional services. Of course. But Ava, these are valuable insights regardless of the source. Perhaps we should schedule a meeting to discuss expanding your role in our fundraising events. The manipulation was working perfectly. Eleanor had used stolen information and fabricated expertise to create new business opportunities that would entangle our professional relationship with family obligations. I'll call you tomorrow to clarify everything, Amanda. Wonderful. And Ava, congratulations on your brother's wedding. Your mother mentioned it's quite the family celebration. After hanging up, I stared at Eleanor with growing horror and admiration for her tactical brilliance. You've been systematically contacting my professional network. I've been taking an interest in my daughter's career success. Most parents would be proud of such professional achievements. Brittany appeared in my office doorway, squeezing the space beyond capacity. Sorry to interrupt, but the caterer just called. They need to confirm kitchen access for food preparation tomorrow and Saturday. What caterer? Marcello's Italian Catering. They're doing the rehearsal dinner tomorrow and the reception buffet Saturday. Didn't your mom mention them? Eleanor nodded approvingly. Tony Marcello does beautiful work. His pasta stations are particularly impressive for large events. My phone immediately buzzed with a text from the same Tony who had contacted me earlier. Hi, Ava, confirming tomorrow's 2 p.m. kitchen walkthrough. Looking forward to working with your family on this special celebration. I never authorized a kitchen walkthrough. Frank pushed into my office behind Brittany. Course you did. Can't have professional catering without proper kitchen coordination. Tony needs to understand available equipment and workspace. My kitchen is not a commercial food preparation facility. Marcus laughed. It doesn't need to be commercial, it just needs counter space and refrigeration for day of coordination. The casual assumption that my personal kitchen would be converted into catering workspace for their convenience made me physically nauseous. Where exactly do you plan to store food for 200 people? Brittany consulted her phone. Tony brings most preparation in warming trays and serving dishes. Your kitchen just provides staging space and basic reheating. And my refrigerator. Oh, we'll need to clear that out for beverage service and dessert storage, Eleanor replied matter-of-factly. They expected me to empty my personal refrigerator to accommodate their catering needs. Every aspect of my home was being treated as available for their modification and use. My phone rang with yet another unknown number. Hello. Hi, Ava. This is Rebecca Chen from the Valley Tribune. I'm calling to schedule our interview about your family's wedding story. I had forgotten about the newspaper feature Eleanor had arranged. There isn't going to be an interview. Oh, your mother was quite enthusiastic about sharing the story of your family reconciliation. She mentioned some beautiful themes about education independence and ultimately choosing family bonds over individual pursuits. The narrative Eleanor had constructed was insidious. My educational and professional success were being reframed as selfish choices that needed to be corrected through renewed family devotion. My mother doesn't speak for me or my choices. I understand family dynamics can be complicated. Perhaps we could focus on the wedding celebration itself rather than the personal backstory. Eleanor was watching me expectantly, clearly hoping media coverage would create additional pressure for compliance. There isn't going to be a wedding celebration at my house. But your mother confirmed Saturday's reception and provided quite detailed information about the event planning process. She provided false information. Rebecca paused, clearly confused by the conflicting stories. Would you prefer to tell your side of the story? Sometimes family perspectives differ on important events. The offer was tempting. A newspaper article explaining the truth about Eleanor's manipulation might provide public vindication and expose their fraudulent behavior. But it would also guarantee permanent family destruction and potentially damage my professional reputation through association with public drama. I'm not interested in any newspaper coverage. Of course, if you change your mind, your mother has my contact information. After hanging up, I faced my family with growing desperation. You told a reporter I was choosing family bonds over individual pursuits. Eleanor shrugged elegantly. It's a beautiful story about personal growth and recognizing what truly matters in life. My education and career aren't character flaws that need correction. Frank stepped closer, his voice taking on a threatening tone. Maybe not flaws, but they sure didn't teach you much about loyalty and responsibility. The attack on my values and choices felt like being 16 again, constantly defending my right to have goals beyond their immediate needs and expectations. Marcus was examining my framed degrees and professional certificates with obvious resentment. All this fancy education and you can't figure out how to help your own family during a crisis. Your poor planning doesn't constitute my crisis. Brittany looked genuinely hurt. I know this is stressful, but we're not trying to take advantage. We just need help making our wedding day special. Her sincerity made everything more complicated. She had been manipulated just like everyone else fed lies about my enthusiasm and cooperation. In her mind, I was being unreasonably difficult about a simple family favor. Brittany, I need you to understand something. I didn't volunteer to host your wedding. I didn't offer my house as a venue. I learned about these plans 30 minutes ago when they showed up at my door. She looked confused. But Marcus said you'd been asking about ways to help with wedding planning. I stared at my brother. When did I ask about helping with wedding planning? You didn't specifically ask, but family members usually want to be involved in major celebrations. Based on what evidence we haven't spoken in 8 years, Eleanor interrupted smoothly. Sometimes people need time to mature before they can appreciate family relationships. We've been patient waiting for you to reach that point. The reframing was masterful. My 8 years of independence and success were being presented as an immature phase that had finally ended with renewed willingness to prioritize family obligations. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Chen. Ava, your mom called me back and explained about the wedding planning stress. She said you're feeling overwhelmed and might seem resistant to help. I want you to know I'm here if you need support managing everything. Eleanor had even manipulated my friends into believing I was struggling with event planning stress rather than resisting an unwanted family invasion. You told Sarah I was overwhelmed by wedding planning. Well, you clearly are overwhelmed. Look how agitated you've become over simple logistics and coordination. The circular logic was infuriating. My resistance to their manipulation was being used as evidence that I needed their help managing the situation they had created without my consent. My phone started buzzing with a constant stream of notifications as Eleanor's manipulation campaign expanded beyond family circles. Each message revealed another layer of community involvement in the fabricated wedding celebration. Ava, this is Mrs. Rodriguez from down the street. Your mother mentioned you might need help with parking coordination for Saturday's reception. My husband can direct traffic if needed. Hi, neighbor Jim from 3 houses down. Heard about the big family wedding. Happy to lend you our extra folding tables if you need them. Ava, this is Carol from the Homeowners Association. We'll need to discuss parking permits and noise ordinances for Saturday evening's event. Each message represented another person who believed Eleanor's version of events. My neighbors now expected a major celebration in their midst, complete with traffic management and noise considerations. Eleanor was reading over my shoulder as each text appeared. See how supportive your community is. Everyone wants to help when they understand the beautiful story. Frank pulled out his own phone, scrolling through what appeared to be an extensive contact list. We should probably coordinate with the police about traffic flow. 200 cars is going to impact the neighborhood pretty significantly. You contacted the police. Just gave them a heads up about temporary parking needs, community courtesy. My doorbell rang again, sending fresh waves of panic through my system. Through the window, I could see a woman in her 60s holding a covered dish and wearing a warm smile. I opened the door to find Mrs. Thompson from St. Mary's Ladies Auxiliary, the same woman who had called about volunteer coordination. Ava, dear, I hope you don't mind me stopping by. I brought my famous mac and cheese casserole for the rehearsal dinner tomorrow night. Behind her stood 2 other women, also carrying covered dishes and wearing expressions of eager helpfulness. Mrs. Thompson, there isn't going to be a rehearsal dinner tomorrow night. Her smile faltered with confusion, but your mother specifically asked for casserole contributions. She said you were providing the main course but could use help with side dishes. Eleanor appeared beside me with practiced grace. Mrs. Thompson, how wonderful to see you again. Please come in and let me introduce you to my daughter properly. Before I could object, Eleanor was ushering the church ladies into my living room, where the wedding centerpieces created an atmosphere of celebration and preparation. Oh my, Mrs. Thompson exclaimed, examining the flower arrangements. These are absolutely gorgeous. Your mother wasn't exaggerating about the elegance of this celebration. The second woman, who introduced herself as Mrs. Patterson, was already examining my dining room layout. This space will be perfect for buffet service. We brought serving utensils and chafing dishes in the car. The third woman, Mrs. Williams, was taking pictures of my living room with obvious delight. I can't wait to share these with the auxiliary newsletter. Such a beautiful story of family reconciliation through wedding celebration. Eleanor guided them toward my kitchen, chattering enthusiastically about tomorrow night's dinner coordination. Ava's been so busy with work that she hasn't had time for proper meal planning. Community support means everything during major family events. I followed helplessly as the church ladies began unloading casserole dishes into my refrigerator and examining my cabinet space for serving equipment. "We'll need to coordinate with the caterer about table setup," Mrs. Thompson said efficiently. "How many guests for tomorrow night?" "Oh, 30 immediate family and wedding party members," Eleanor replied before I could speak. Mrs. Patterson was arranging my silverware drawer with obvious organizational pleasure. "We can handle place settings and cleanup. You just focus on enjoying your family time." The assumption that I was enjoying forced family interaction was particularly galling given my obvious stress and resistance. My phone rang with yet another unknown number. "Ava Johnson. This is Detective Mike Sullivan from the County Sheriff's Department. We received a report about potential traffic and parking issues for a large event at your address this Saturday." My blood went cold. A report from whom? Community member concerned about neighborhood safety during what sounds like a significant celebration. Just wanted to touch base about permits and crowd control. Eleanor was watching me with obvious satisfaction, while the church ladies continued organizing my kitchen around their casserole contributions. "Detective Sullivan, there isn't going to be a large event at my address." No, the caller seemed quite concerned about 200 vehicles in a residential area, said it was a wedding reception with evening entertainment. The caller was misinformed. "I see. Well, if plans change and you do end up hosting a major gathering, you'll need to contact our office about special event permits and liability requirements." After hanging up, I stared at Eleanor with growing horror. "You reported my own address to the sheriff's department." "Hadabiatusai." I simply provided accurate information about potential community impact. Responsible event planning requires coordination with local authorities. Frank nodded approvingly. "Smart thinking. Don't want any noise complaints or parking violations ruining the celebration." The church ladies were deep in conversation about table arrangements and serving coordination, treating my kitchen like community property available for their volunteer organization. "Mrs. Thompson, you need to take your casseroles and leave. There is no rehearsal dinner happening here tomorrow." She looked genuinely hurt. "But your mother was so grateful for our help. She said you were overwhelmed by the scope of family coordination." Eleanor stepped forward smoothly. "Ava's just having pre-event anxiety, very normal for someone hosting their first major family celebration." "Of course, dear," Mrs. Patterson said sympathetically. "Planning a wedding reception can be quite stressful. That's why community support is so important." Mrs. Williams pulled out her phone. "I should call Pastor Williams about ceremony timing. He mentioned coordinating with the reception schedule." "What ceremony timing?" Eleanor's smile was triumphant. "The wedding ceremony, naturally. Pastor Williams graciously agreed to officiate in your beautiful backyard Saturday morning." The church ladies beamed with excitement at this news. "Oh, wonderful." Mrs. Thompson clapped her hands. "A garden wedding followed by reception in the same location. So convenient for guests." My phone immediately buzzed with a text from Pastor Williams. "Ava, looking forward to Saturday's ceremony in your backyard. Beautiful setting for Marcus and Brittany's vows. Should I arrive at 10 a.m. for setup hours?" The scope of Eleanor's planning was breathtaking. Not only had she arranged an unwanted reception, but she had scheduled a complete wedding ceremony on my property without my knowledge or consent. "How many people are you expecting for the ceremony?" "Just close family and the wedding party," Brittany replied. "About 50 people for the morning ceremony, then everyone else arrives for the afternoon reception." 50 people for a backyard wedding ceremony at 10 a.m., followed by 200 people for an evening reception lasting until midnight. My property was being transformed into a full-service wedding venue for an entire day. Mrs. Patterson was examining my living room layout with professional efficiency. "We'll need to rearrange this furniture for ceremony seating. The sofa can go against the wall, and we can arrange folding chairs in rows facing the patio doors." They were planning to completely reorganize my home interior to accommodate wedding ceremony seating for 50 people. Nobody is rearranging my furniture. Mrs. Williams looked confused. But where will ceremony guests sit during the service? Eleanor pulled out her phone, showing what appeared to be a detailed floor plan. I've worked out optimal seating arrangements for both indoor and outdoor space utilization. She had actually drawn up architectural plans for converting my home into a wedding venue, complete with furniture placement and traffic flow patterns. My phone buzzed with another text this time from someone named Tyler. "Hey Ava, Marcus gave me your number. Setting up DJ equipment Friday evening for sound checks. What time works for backyard access?" "Who is Tyler?" Marcus grinned. "My buddy who's doing music for the reception. Great DJ, really knows how to keep a party going until late." "How late?" "Midnight, maybe 1 a.m. if people are still having fun. Don't worry, Tyler brings his own sound equipment and lighting setup." They expected electronic music and lighting equipment operating in my backyard until 1 in the morning, presumably at volumes loud enough to entertain 200 dancing guests. The church ladies were taking measurements of my dining room and making notes about table placement and serving station logistics. "We should coordinate with the rental company about when tables arrive," Mrs. Thompson said efficiently. "Want to make sure we have adequate space for both ceremony seating and reception dining." Eleanor nodded approvingly. "The rental truck arrives Thursday morning at 8 a.m. Tent setup should be completed by noon, leaving Friday for table arrangement and decoration." "What tent?" "Weather protection tent for outdoor dining and dancing. Can't risk having the reception ruined by unexpected rain." Brittany pulled out her phone, showing pictures of elaborate white tents with string lighting and fabric draping. "It's going to be absolutely magical, like something from a fairy tale." The casual assumption that my backyard would be converted into a fairy tale wedding venue was both impressive and terrifying in its scope. Mrs. Patterson was examining my electrical outlets with professional concern. "Will you have adequate power for catering equipment and entertainment systems?" Frank stepped forward helpfully. "Might need to run some extension cords from the house. Good thing Ava's got a modern electrical system." They were planning to run power cables from my home's electrical system to support commercial-grade equipment for food service and entertainment. My phone rang again, this time showing Amanda Kingsley's number. "Ava, I've been thinking more about our conversation regarding event planning services. Your mother's insights about donor psychology were quite sophisticated." I walked toward my bathroom for privacy, the only space in my house that wasn't currently occupied by unwanted family members or church volunteers. "Amanda Eleanor Johnson is not qualified to provide insights about anything related to my business." Perhaps not, but the question she raised about venue psychology and event design for donor engagement are worth exploring. I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss expanding your role in our upcoming fundraiser. "Amanda, my role is marketing and communications, not event planning." "I understand, but the two areas overlap significantly. Your mother suggested that hospitality expertise could enhance donor cultivation strategies." Eleanor had somehow convinced my biggest client that I possessed hospitality expertise that could expand our professional relationship. The manipulation was creating new business opportunities that would blur the lines between my professional identity and family obligations. "I need to call you back when I can discuss this properly." "Of course. And Ava, best wishes for Saturday's family celebration. Your mother's description of the event sounds absolutely lovely." After hanging up, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me appeared exhausted and overwhelmed, exactly what Eleanor had been telling everyone about my emotional state. When I returned to my living room, the church ladies had completely taken over the space. Casserole dishes covered every surface, furniture was being measured for relocation, and detailed coordination notes were being taken about everything from electrical requirements to parking coordination. Mrs. Thompson approached me with motherly concern. Dear, you look tired. Wedding planning can be absolutely exhausting. Why don't you let us handle the logistical details while you focus on enjoying your family time? Eleanor beamed with satisfaction. See how much easier everything becomes with proper community support. You've been trying to manage everything alone when you could have been accepting help all along. The reframing was perfect. My resistance to their manipulation was being presented as stubborn independence that prevented me from accepting beneficial community assistance. Brittany was taking pictures of the church ladies' organizational work, clearly delighted with their efficiency and enthusiasm. This is exactly the kind of family and community celebration I dreamed of, she told me with genuine warmth. Thank you so much for making this possible, Ava. Her gratitude made everything worse. She genuinely believed I was providing generous hospitality rather than being manipulated into unwilling compliance with an elaborate family fraud scheme. My phone buzzed with a group text message that included numbers I didn't recognize. Wedding party group chat. Can't wait for Saturday's celebration. Thanks, Ava, for hosting such a beautiful event. See everyone Thursday for setup. My phone continued buzzing with messages from the wedding party group chat as I realized the full scope of how many people were now involved in Eleanor's elaborate scheme. Names I didn't recognize were discussing arrival times, coordinating decorations, and thanking me for my generosity in hosting such a major celebration. The church ladies were still bustling around my kitchen when my doorbell rang again. This time, it was a man in a business suit carrying an official-looking folder. Ms. Johnson, I'm Ted Carlson from Party Perfect Rentals. I need to review our contract details and collect the security deposit for Thursday's delivery. Eleanor intercepted him before I could respond. How wonderful that you could stop by personally. I'm Eleanor Johnson, event coordinator for Saturday's celebration. Great to meet you, Mrs. Johnson. We spoke on the phone about the tent setup and furniture rental. He handed her the folder, which she opened to reveal several pages of detailed contracts and payment schedules. Everything looks perfect, Eleanor said, scanning the documents. Delivery Thursday morning at 8 a.m., pickup Sunday afternoon. I moved closer to examine the papers over Eleanor's shoulder, and what I saw made my blood freeze. The contract was made out to my name and address with my phone number listed as the primary contact. At the bottom of each page was a signature that looked remarkably similar to my own handwriting. I never signed these contracts. Ted looked confused. Ma'am, we have signed agreements here with your name and contact information. Payment authorization and liability acknowledgement are all completed. Eleanor smiled smoothly. Ava's just nervous about the financial details. Pre-event stress, you understand. Yeah, actually, I need to verify something, Ted said, pulling out his phone. Our payment processing shows the credit card authorization was declined yesterday. We'll need alternative payment before delivery. My heart started racing. What credit card authorization? Ted consulted his paperwork. The MasterCard ending in 7834 listed as belonging to Ava Johnson at this address. I don't have a MasterCard ending in 7834. Eleanor looked genuinely surprised. Oh dear, there must be some confusion with the payment processing. Frank stepped forward aggressively. What kind of confusion? You said payment was handled. I thought it was, Eleanor replied, but something in her expression suggested this wasn't an unexpected development. Ted was clearly uncomfortable with the family tension. Look, I just need valid payment authorization before we can proceed with delivery. The total comes to $4,800 for tent rental tables, chairs, dance floor, and lighting equipment. The amount hit me like a physical blow. They had committed me to nearly $5,000 in rental costs without my knowledge or consent. I'm not paying for any of this. But Ava, Brittany said with obvious distress, we need the tent and tables for the reception. It won't work without proper seating and weather protection. Ted looked between family members with growing concern. If there's a payment dispute, I'll need to cancel the delivery and assess cancellation fees according to our contract terms. Eleanor pulled out her own credit card. Let me take care of this temporarily while we sort out the payment confusion. Ma'am, the contract specifies that the cardholder must match the name on the rental agreement. I can't accept payment from someone other than Ava Johnson. Frank's expression was darkening with anger. So you're telling us this whole wedding is going to be ruined because of credit card technicalities? I'm telling you that contractual obligations require proper authorization from the named responsible party. I stared at the signature on the rental contracts. It looked enough like my handwriting to pass casual inspection, but I knew with absolute certainty that I had never seen these documents before. Can you tell me when and how these contracts were signed? Ted consulted his file. Electronic signature processes were completed Monday afternoon. Documents were emailed to the address listed on the account signed electronically and returned within 2 hours. What email address? Creates or disowned? Let me check. He scrolled through his phone. The email was sent to ava.johnson.events@gmail.com. I felt the blood drain from my face. I don't have an email address with events in the name. Eleanor looked genuinely confused. But that's the email address you gave us for wedding coordination. I never gave you any email address for wedding coordination because I never agreed to coordinate anything. Ted was starting to look alarmed. Ma'am, are you saying these contracts were signed without your authorization? That's exactly what I'm saying. Frank stepped closer, his voice taking on a threatening tone. Now hold on, just a minute. Family members handle logistics for each other all the time. This doesn't need to become a legal issue. Identity theft and contract fraud are already legal issues. The church ladies had stopped their organizing activities and were watching the confrontation with obvious discomfort. Mrs. Thompson approached me with motherly concern. Perhaps this is just a misunderstanding that can be worked out between family members. Ted was clearly eager to escape the situation. Look, I'm gonna need clear authorization from the actual Ava Johnson before proceeding with any delivery or payment processing. Eleanor tried one more manipulation. Ava, surely you don't want to ruin your brother's wedding over paperwork details. I want to understand how contracts were signed using my name and an email address I don't control. Marcus looked genuinely panicked for the first time. Come on, Ava. We can figure out the payment stuff later. Don't cancel everything over technical problems. These aren't technical problems. This is fraud. Brittany started crying, which clearly wasn't part of Eleanor's master plan. I don't understand what's happening, she sobbed. Marcus said his sister was excited to help with the wedding. Now everything is falling apart. Her tears made everyone uncomfortable, especially Ted, who just wanted to complete his business transaction and leave. Why, Mrs. Johnson, he said to Eleanor, I'm going to need to speak with our legal department about this contract dispute. In the meantime, Thursday's delivery is suspended until we can verify proper authorization. After Ted left, the room fell into tense silence. The church ladies began quietly packing up their casserole contributions, clearly sensing that they had walked into a more complicated family situation than Eleanor had described. Mrs. Thompson patted my arm gently. Dear, I hope your family can work through whatever difficulties you're facing. We'll keep you in our prayers. After the church ladies left, I faced my family with growing fury. I want to see that email account you created using my name. Eleanor looked genuinely uncomfortable for the first time. I may have set up a coordination email to help with vendor communications. Show me. She reluctantly pulled out her phone and accessed an email account that indeed used my name with events added. The inbox was filled with dozens of messages from vendors, family members, and service providers, all addressed to me and apparently answered by Eleanor pretending to be me. I scrolled through messages confirming catering services, music equipment, rental floral arrangements, photography packages, and transportation coordination. Each response was signed with my name and written as if I was the enthusiastic event coordinator. You've been impersonating me and writing to dozens of vendors and service providers. I've been handling coordination tasks to reduce your stress level. Frank tried to regain control of the situation. Look, the important thing is getting this wedding back on track. We can sort out the paperwork details after Saturday. There is no wedding happening Saturday. Marcus's panic was escalating. Ava, you can't do this. We have 200 people expecting a celebration. Brittany's family is flying in from 3 states. Then you should have actually asked me before making all these plans. Brittany was still crying, but now her tears seemed more angry than sad. Marcus, you said she already agreed to everything. You said she was excited to be part of the wedding planning. I thought she would be excited once she understood the situation. Eleanor tried to regain control of the narrative. Family members naturally want to help each other during major life events. Ava's resistance is just pre-event anxiety. My phone rang with a call from a number I recognize as my attorney Rachel Martinez's office. I had contacted her office earlier about the contract situation. I need to take this call privately. I walked to my bedroom and closed the door, leaving my family in the living room with the evidence of their fraudulent scheme scattered across my coffee table. Rachel, thank you for calling back. Ava, I've been reviewing the information you sent about potential contract fraud and identity theft. The situation is more serious than you initially described. How serious? Creating email accounts using someone else's name to conduct business transactions constitutes identity theft under federal law. Forging signatures on contracts involving significant financial obligations could result in felony fraud charges. My legs felt weak. Felony charges. The dollar amounts involved and the interstate nature of some of these vendor relationships put this firmly in federal jurisdiction. If you decide to pursue legal action, this would be handled by federal prosecutors. Through my bedroom door, I could hear Eleanor's voice, trying to convince Brittany that everything would work out once I calmed down and accepted family responsibilities. Rachel, there's something else. They've been contacting my business clients using fabricated information about my professional services. That's additional identity theft for commercial purposes. Ava, you need to understand that this level of systematic fraud indicates sophisticated criminal behavior, not simple family miscommunication. What should I do? First, document everything. Take pictures of all contracts, save all email communications, and keep records of every vendor contact. Second, contact the credit reporting agencies to place fraud alerts on all your accounts. Third, consider whether you want to pursue criminal charges or focus on civil remedies. What's the difference? Criminal charges mean police investigation and potential prosecution by federal authorities. Civil remedies mean you sue for financial damages and seek court orders preventing future fraud. Which do you recommend? Ava, the systematic nature of this fraud suggests it won't stop voluntarily. Your family has committed multiple federal crimes and shown no remorse or intention to cease their criminal behavior. The words, federal crimes, made everything feel surreal. I had grown up with these people. Eleanor had packed my school lunches and attended parent-teacher conferences. Frank had taught me to drive and helped with homework. Now a criminal attorney was telling me they had committed felonies against me. I need time to think about this. Of course, but Ava, document everything immediately. Evidence preservation is critical if you decide to pursue legal action. After ending the call, I sat on my bed, trying to process the magnitude of what my family had done. This wasn't just wedding planning that had gotten out of hand. This was systematic fraud involving identity theft, contract forgery, and business impersonation that could result in federal criminal charges. I returned to my living room to find Eleanor on my landline phone, apparently conducting yet another vendor coordination call while my family waited with obvious tension. Yes, that's correct. Ava Johnson is confirming the photography package for Saturday. 8 hours of coverage starting at 10 a.m. for the ceremony. She paused, listening. The payment will be processed today. Thank you so much. She hung up and turned to me with false brightness. I was just confirming the photographer. Jessica does beautiful wedding albums. You just committed me to paying for an 8-hour photography package. It's Marcus and Brittany's wedding day. Of course, they need professional documentation. My phone immediately buzzed with a text from the photographer. Hi, Ava. So excited to capture Marcus and Brittany's special day. Final payment of $1,800 due before Saturday's shoot. Thanks for choosing Memories by Jessica. $1,800 for photography I had never requested added to the nearly $5,000 in rental costs and whatever other financial commitments Eleanor had made using my identity. Eleanor, I'm going to ask you one more time. How many vendors have you contacted using my name and financial information? She pulled out a leather planner filled with detailed notes and contact information. Let's see. There's the rental company, the florist, the caterer, the photographer, the musician quartet for the ceremony, Tyler for reception music, the transportation service for elderly relatives, and the bakery for the wedding cake. Each item she listed represented another fraudulent financial commitment made in my name. What transportation service? Luxury van service for your grandmother's sisters and Uncle Robert's family. They're quite elderly and shouldn't have to worry about parking and walking long distances. Frank nodded approvingly. Thoughtful touch. Family takes care of family. My phone buzzed with a text from Elite Transportation Services. Ava confirming pickup schedule for Saturday's elderly guests. 3 vehicles, 8 hours of service. Payment of $950 due upon completion. Nearly $1,000 for transportation services I had never authorized for relatives I hadn't seen in 8 years. How much money have you committed me to spend on this wedding? Eleanor consulted her planner with obvious pride in her organizational skills, including all vendors and services approximately $12,000. Very reasonable for a wedding of this caliber. $12,000. They had committed me to $12,000 in wedding expenses through systematic fraud and identity theft. Marcus looked genuinely surprised by the total. $12,000. I thought wedding stuff was cheaper than that. Quality vendors charge professional rates, Eleanor replied matter-of-factly. This is your wedding day, not a backyard barbecue. Brittany was scrolling through her phone with growing excitement. Oh, this photographer's portfolio is gorgeous. Look at these wedding albums. She showed me pictures of elaborate wedding celebrations with professional lighting posed family portraits and artistic couple photography. The kind of comprehensive documentation that would require 8 hours of professional coverage. Brittany, I need you to understand something. I didn't hire this photographer. I didn't authorize any of these services. Eleanor used my name and personal information to make financial commitments I never agreed to. Her smile faded with confusion. But Marcus said you wanted to give us a beautiful wedding as your gift to the family. I stared at my brother. When did I say I wanted to give you $12,000 worth of wedding services? You didn't say it explicitly, but successful people usually want to share their good fortune with family during major celebrations. The assumption that my financial success belonged to them was breathtaking in its entitlement. My phone rang with a call from my business partner, Jake. Ava, we have a serious problem. Someone claiming to be your assistant called the Sullivan Foundation and scheduled a meeting about event planning services for their annual gala. My stomach dropped. The Sullivan Foundation was a potential client worth $50,000 in annual marketing contracts. What kind of meeting? Consultation about comprehensive event management, including venue coordination, catering oversight, and entertainment booking. They think you're expanding into full-service event planning. Eleanor was watching me with obvious satisfaction while Jake continued. The meeting is scheduled for Friday afternoon. They're expecting a formal proposal about event planning services you don't actually offer. Cancel the meeting immediately and explain that Eleanor Johnson has no authority to represent my business. Already tried that. The foundation administrator said your assistant was very knowledgeable about their organizational needs. and seemed to understand their donor-based demographics. Eleanor had somehow researched the Sullivan Foundation's operations well enough to convincingly represent herself as my qualified assistant. Jake implements security protocol immediately. Eleanor Johnson is conducting systematic fraud using my business identity. How did she get information about our potential clients? I stared at Eleanor, who was casually examining my living room bookshelves while clearly listening to every word of my conversation. I'm working on figuring that out. After ending the call, I turned to Eleanor with growing suspicion. How do you know about the Sullivan Foundation? Professional networking requires staying informed about community organizations and business opportunities. That doesn't answer my question. Frank stepped forward defensively. Your mother takes an interest in your success. Most daughters would appreciate that kind of parental support. Calling my potential clients to offer services I don't provide isn't parental support. It's sabotage. Marcus was examining my home office setup with obvious interest. Nice computer system you've got here. Probably handles a lot of business communication. The casual mention of my computer made me realize how they might have accessed confidential client information. Have any of you been in my home office when I wasn't here? Eleanor looked genuinely confused by the question. We just arrived this morning, dear. That's not what I asked. Brittany was scrolling through wedding vendor reviews on her phone, apparently oblivious to the escalating tension around business fraud and identity theft. Oh, this catering company has amazing reviews. Listen to this. Tony Marcello created the most beautiful buffet presentation for our daughter's wedding. Professional service and delicious food. We're so lucky Ava found such quality vendors. I hadn't found any vendors. Eleanor had researched and contacted them using my name and personal information without my knowledge or consent. My phone buzzed with another text from the catering company, Ava confirming tomorrow's kitchen walkthrough at 2 p.m. Looking forward to coordinating Saturday's Italian feast for 200 guests. Final payment of $3,400 due Friday evening. $3,400 for catering services added to the growing total of financial commitments made through identity fraud. Eleanor, I want to see a complete list of every vendor you've contacted and every financial commitment you've made using my name. She consulted her leather planner again, flipping through pages of detailed notes and contact information. Beyond what I've already mentioned, there's the wedding cake from Sweet Dreams Bakery Linens and tableware from Elegant Events, additional lighting from Ambiance Designs, and coordination services for cleanup. Each additional service represented more money I supposedly owed for a wedding I had never agreed to host. My phone rang again, this time with a call from my mortgage company. Ms. Johnson, this is David from First National Mortgage Services. We received an application for a home equity line of credit that we need to verify with you directly. My blood went cold. I didn't apply for a home equity line of credit. The application was submitted online Monday using your personal information and property details. The requested amount is $25,000 with intended use listed as family business investment. $25,000. Someone had attempted to borrow against my house without my knowledge. David, I did not submit that application. This is identity theft. I see. The application included detailed property information and personal financial data that suggested legitimate account access. Eleanor was watching me with an unreadable expression while Frank and Marcus exchanged glances that suggested they knew more about this than they were letting on. What information was included in the application? Property tax records, mortgage payment, history, employment details, and bank account information. Very comprehensive documentation. The level of personal financial information required for a home equity application suggested systematic research into my private records. David, I need you to flag this as identity theft immediately and provide me with all documentation about how this application was submitted. Of course, we'll launch an investigation and contact you within 48 hours with our findings. After ending the call, I stared at my family with growing horror. Someone tried to borrow $25,000 against my house. Eleanor looked genuinely surprised. That's terrible. Identity theft is such a serious problem these days. Her reaction seemed authentic, but the timing was too suspicious to ignore. The application was submitted Monday, the same day you started contacting vendors about the wedding. Frank shrugged. Coincidences happen. Probably just criminals taking advantage of public property records. Marcus was examining my entertainment center with renewed interest. Good thing your mortgage company caught it before any money got approved. Their casual reactions to attempted mortgage fraud seemed inconsistent with the gravity of the situation. My phone buzzed with a text from my credit monitoring service. Alert, new credit inquiry detected on your account. Equifax credit report accessed for loan application review. Someone had accessed my credit report as part of the home equity application process. I'm calling the police. Eleanor stood abruptly. Ava, there's no need to involve law enforcement in family business. Someone committed mortgage fraud using my personal information. That's not family business. Frank stepped closer, his voice taking on a threatening tone. Think carefully about what you're accusing family members of doing. I'm not accusing. I'm stating facts. You've committed identity theft, contract fraud, and business impersonation. Now, someone has attempted mortgage fraud using my property. Brittany looked genuinely distressed. I don't understand what's happening. This was supposed to be a beautiful family wedding celebration. Her confusion seemed authentic. She appeared to be as much a victim of their manipulation as I was fed lies about my enthusiasm and cooperation. Marcus tried to regain control of the situation. Look, even if there are some paperwork problems, we can't cancel the wedding now. Too many people are depending on Saturday's celebration. The wedding was never my responsibility to provide. Eleanor pulled out her phone. Let me call some of the vendors and see if we can work out payment arrangements that don't require immediate funds from you. Don't call anyone else pretending to be me. I'm trying to find solutions that work for everyone. My phone rang with another unknown number. Hello, Ms. Johnson. This is Agent Lisa Chen from the FBI Financial Crimes Division. We received a referral about potential interstate fraud involving your personal and business identity. The room fell completely silent as everyone processed the implications of federal law enforcement involvement. Agent Chen, thank you for calling. Can you speak freely, or would you prefer to schedule a secure meeting? I looked around my living room at my family members who were all watching me with varying degrees of alarm and confusion. I can speak freely. We understand you've been the victim of systematic identity theft involving business fraud and attempted mortgage fraud. The interstate nature of some vendor relationships and the financial amounts involved put this under federal jurisdiction. Eleanor's face had gone pale while Frank and Marcus exchanged worried glances. What happens next? We'll need to schedule an interview to document the full scope of fraudulent activity. Can you come to our field office tomorrow afternoon? Yes, I can be there. Excellent. Bring all documentation related to contracts, vendor communications, and financial commitments made without your authorization. We'll also need access to any devices or accounts that may have been compromised. After scheduling the FBI meeting and ending the call, I faced my family with a mixture of sadness and determination. Federal agents want to interview me about the fraud you've committed. Eleanor's composure was finally cracking. Ava, surely you don't want to destroy your family over a misunderstanding about wedding planning. This isn't a misunderstanding, it's systematic criminal fraud. Frank's expression had turned desperate. Think about what you're doing to Marcus and Brittany. Their wedding day will be ruined. You ruined their wedding day when you built it on fraud and lies. Marcus looked genuinely panicked for the first time. Ava, please, we can fix this. We'll figure out different arrangements. The time for different arrangements was before you committed federal crimes using my identity. Brittany was crying again, but this time her tears seemed more understanding than angry. Marcus, you told me she agreed to all of this. You said she was excited to help with our wedding. I thought she would be once she understood how important it was to me. Eleanor made one final attempt at manipulation. Ava, your grandmother Helen always said family forgiveness was more important than being right about small details. Identity theft and fraud aren't small details. The weight of what my family had done was finally sinking in. They had committed multiple federal crimes, destroyed my trust permanently, and potentially damaged my professional reputation through their fraudulent schemes. But I also felt something unexpected relief. For 8 years, I had carried guilt about cutting them from my life. I had wondered if I had been too harsh, too unforgiving, too focused on past hurts rather than family healing. Now I understood that my instincts had been correct all along. These people were genuinely dangerous to my well-being, my financial security, and my professional reputation. Staying away from them hadn't been cruel or immature. It had been necessary self-protection. That evening, after my family had finally left with threats, tears, and promises that this wasn't over, I sat in my quiet living room surrounded by evidence of their elaborate fraud. Wedding centerpieces cluttered my coffee table, vendor contracts with forged signatures covered my dining room table, and my phone continued buzzing with messages from relatives excited about Saturday's celebration. I had spent the afternoon documenting everything as Rachel had instructed. Photos of contracts, screenshots of the fraudulent email account Eleanor had created, recordings of voicemail messages from vendors, and detailed notes about every financial commitment made in my name. The scope of their planning was staggering. Beyond the obvious vendors and services, Eleanor had contacted relatives across 3 states to coordinate travel arrangements, reserved hotel blocks for out-of-town guests, and even arranged for a videographer to create a wedding documentary. My phone rang with a call from Aunt Patricia, my grandmother's sister, who lived 4 hours away. Ava, sweetheart, I'm so excited about Saturday's celebration. Your mother told me such wonderful stories about your beautiful home and garden. Aunt Patricia, there isn't going to be a celebration at my house Saturday. Oh dear, did something happen with the weather forecast? Eleanor mentioned you might move everything indoors if necessary. The casual mention of backup weather plans revealed even deeper levels of coordination and manipulation. The issue isn't weather. The issue is that I never agreed to host this wedding. There was confused silence on the phone. But Eleanor said you volunteered your home after the country club had that terrible fire. She said you were so generous and excited to bring the family together. Eleanor lied to you. Ava, I don't understand. Why would your mother lie about something so important? The hurt and confusion in Aunt Patricia's voice made my heart ache. She was a sweet woman in her 70s who had driven 4 hours to attend what she believed was a joyful family reunion. Aunt Patricia, I need you to understand that I haven't spoken to my immediate family in 8 years. I learned about Marcus's wedding plans when they showed up at my door this morning, demanding I host the reception. 8 years, but Eleanor talks about you all the time. She shares updates about your business success and mentions how proud she is of your accomplishments. The revelation that Eleanor had been fabricating a relationship with me for years was both surprising and disturbing. What kind of updates? Professional achievements, client successes, home improvements. She made it sound like you spoke regularly about your career and personal life. Eleanor had been systematically lying to extended family members about our relationship, creating a false narrative of ongoing contact and maternal pride in my independence. We haven't had any contact since I left home for college. Oh my, this changes everything. I need to call Robert and David to let them know about the confusion. Thank you, Aunt Patricia. I'm sorry you made travel arrangements based on false information. It's not your fault, dear. Family situations can be more complicated than they appear from the outside. After ending the call, I realized that Eleanor's manipulation extended far beyond wedding planning. She had been maintaining fictional relationships and sharing fabricated information about my life for years, positioning herself as the proud mother of a successful daughter who regularly shared personal details. My phone immediately rang again, this time from Uncle Robert. Ava Patricia just called with some disturbing information about Saturday's wedding plans. Uncle Robert, I'm glad she reached out to you. Can you help me understand what's really happening? Eleanor made this sound like a beautiful family reconciliation celebration. I spent 20 minutes explaining the morning's events, the fraudulent contracts, and the systematic identity theft that had been used to create the illusion of my willing participation. This is much more serious than family miscommunication, Robert said grimly. This sounds like criminal fraud. I'm meeting with FBI agents tomorrow to provide documentation. FBI, Eleanor, and Frank have really gotten themselves into serious trouble. Uncle Robert, can I ask you something? Has Eleanor been telling family members that she and I have regular contact? Oh, yes, for years. She talks about your business success, mentions conversations about your career goals, and shares details about your home and personal life. Made it sound like you'd grown closer as adults. Another layer of manipulation revealed. Eleanor had been using fabricated stories about our relationship to maintain her social status as a successful mother of an accomplished daughter. We've had zero contact since I left for college. That means everything she's shared about your life has been fictional. Robert, I need to make some calls to other family members. Over the next hour, I contacted cousins, aunts, and family friends to discover the extent of Eleanor's fabricated narrative. The story was consistent across all conversations. Eleanor had portrayed herself as my proud mother who received regular updates about my professional achievements and personal milestones. Cousin Jennifer had believed I sent Eleanor photos of home renovations and asked for decorating advice. Cousin David thought I regularly sought Eleanor's business guidance for my marketing consultancy. Aunt Margaret believed I had reconnected with my parents after realizing the importance of family relationships. Every piece of information Eleanor had shared about my adult life had been researched through social media, professional networking sites, and public records, rather than actual communication between us. The systematic nature of her lies was stunning. She had spent 8 years maintaining a fictional relationship to preserve her reputation as a loving mother, rather than admitting that her daughter had chosen permanent estrangement. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Ava, please reconsider. Brittany's family is already traveling here. Her grandparents are flying in from Arizona tomorrow. Please don't ruin this for her. The emotional manipulation was continuing even after their fraud had been exposed. Now I was supposed to feel responsible for disappointing Brittany's elderly grandparents who had made travel arrangements based on lies. I called Brittany directly, figuring she deserved to understand the truth about what Marcus and his parents had done. Brittany, it's Ava. I think we need to talk honestly about what's happening with your wedding plans. Oh, Ava, thank goodness you called. I've been so confused by everything that happened today. Marcus is telling me one thing, but your reaction suggested something completely different. What has Marcus told you about my relationship with his family? He said you'd grown apart during college, but that everyone wanted to reconnect for major family events. He made it sound like you'd been asking about ways to help with wedding planning. Brittany, I haven't spoken to Marcus or his parents in 8 years. I learned about your engagement and the wedding plans when they showed up at my door this morning. There was stunned silence. 8 years, but Marcus said you'd been asking about the wedding details and seemed excited to be involved. Marcus lied to you about everything. I don't understand. Why would he lie about something so important? Because he knew I would never voluntarily host your wedding, so he created a scenario where refusing would make me appear cruel and unreasonable to people who only knew his fabricated version of events. Brittany started crying softly. This explains so much about your reaction today. I thought you were just stressed about hosting duties. His parents committed identity theft and fraud to create contracts and financial obligations using my name. I'm meeting with FBI agents tomorrow to provide evidence of their crimes. Was FBI agents? Oh my God, Marcus, what have you done? I could hear Marcus in the background asking what was wrong. Brittany, you deserve to know that your wedding plans were built on systematic fraud and lies. Whatever you decide to do with that information is your choice. I need to think about this. This isn't the man I thought I was marrying. After ending the call, I felt genuinely sorry for Brittany. She had been manipulated just like everyone else fed lies about enthusiastic family cooperation and loving reconciliation. Her dream wedding had been constructed through criminal fraud, and now she was discovering that her fiancé was capable of elaborate deception. My landline rang with a call from Detective Sullivan at the Sheriff's Department. Ms. Johnson, I'm following up on the report about potential traffic issues for Saturday's event. I understand there may be some confusion about whether the event is actually taking place. Detective Sullivan, there is no event taking place at my address. Someone provided false information about a wedding reception. I see. Well, that explains the conflicting information we've been receiving. Several more community members called today expressing concerns about parking and noise for a large celebration. Eleanor had apparently expanded her community outreach beyond the initial police contact. Who contacted you about the wedding? Multiple neighbors reporting information they received from family members about Saturday evening festivities. Seems like quite a few people believed a major event was planned. Detective Sullivan, the people who reported this event have been conducting systematic fraud using my identity. I'm working with federal agents to document criminal activity. Federal agents. This sounds more serious than neighborhood event coordination. Much more serious, identity theft, contract fraud, and business impersonation across multiple states. I'll make note of the federal involvement in our incident report. Thanks for clarifying the situation. After hanging up, I realized that Eleanor's manipulation had extended to neighborhood relationships as well. My neighbors now believed I was either hosting a major celebration or had suddenly canceled a long-planned family event. Either way, my standing in the community had been affected by their fraudulent schemes. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Chen. Ava, your mom called again about helping with wedding coordination. She's worried you're overwhelmed and not thinking clearly. Should I come over to help with planning? Even Sarah, who had known me for 15 years, was being manipulated into believing I needed intervention and support for wedding planning stress. I called her directly. Sarah, I need you to understand something important. My mother and I haven't spoken in 8 years. Any communication you've received from her about wedding planning or my emotional state is based on lies. But she knew so much about your life and business. She mentioned specific clients and recent projects. She researched that information online without my knowledge. We have no relationship whatsoever. Oh my God, Ava. She made it sound like you were having a breakdown over wedding planning stress and needed support from friends. She's trying to manipulate everyone who knows me into pressuring me to comply with financial fraud. This is insane. I'm so sorry I believed her stories. It's not your fault. She's very convincing when she wants to be. After updating Sarah about the real situation, I spent the evening preparing for tomorrow's FBI interview. Rachel had provided a comprehensive checklist of evidence to gather, and the scope of documentation was overwhelming. Contract forgeries, email impersonation records, vendor communications, financial fraud attempts, business identity theft, and social manipulation campaigns across family, professional, and community networks. My family hadn't just planned an unwanted wedding. They had conducted a systematic attack on my personal and professional identity designed to force compliance through financial obligation, social pressure, and emotional manipulation. But as I organized evidence of their crimes, I felt something unexpected excitement. For the first time in 8 years, I had absolute proof that cutting them from my life had been the right decision. No more guilt about family estrangement. No more wondering if I had been too harsh or unforgiving. They had shown their true character through their own criminal behavior, and tomorrow I would have the opportunity to ensure they faced consequences for their actions. Thursday morning arrived with the sound of trucks rumbling down my quiet residential street at 7:45 a.m. I watched from my bedroom window as a massive rental truck labeled Party Perfect Rentals parked in front of my house, followed by a second truck carrying what appeared to be tent equipment. My phone had been buzzing since 6 a.m. with vendor coordination messages. Ava, this is Mike from Party Perfect, running 15 minutes early for delivery. Hope that's okay. Hi, Ava, tent setup crew arriving at 8 a.m. sharp. Looking forward to creating a beautiful reception space for Saturday. Good morning. This is Jennifer from your wedding party group chat. So excited to help with decorations this afternoon. What time should we arrive? Each message reinforced the reality that dozens of people believed they were participating in legitimate wedding preparation rather than an elaborate fraud scheme. I had dressed in business attire for my FBI interview, but first I needed to document the vendor invasion that was about to unfold at my property. The doorbell rang at exactly 8 a.m. Ms. Johnson Mike from Party Perfect Rentals. We're here for the tent setup and table delivery. Behind him stood a crew of 4 workers carrying clipboards and wearing matching company shirts. 2 more trucks had arrived while I was getting dressed, creating a convoy of commercial vehicles on my residential street. I told Ted yesterday that all deliveries were canceled due to contract fraud. Mike looked confused. Ma'am, I spoke with Ted this morning, and he said the payment issues had been resolved. We received authorization to proceed with delivery. From whom? Eleanor Johnson called our office at 7 this morning with credit card authorization. Payment was processed and delivery confirmed. Eleanor had somehow managed to authorize payment for nearly $5,000 in rental equipment after yesterday's confrontation about contract fraud. What credit card information did she provide? Mike consulted his clipboard. MasterCard ending in 7834, same as listed on the original contract. The same credit card number that had been declined yesterday, but somehow was now working for equipment rental authorization. Mike, I need to see the payment authorization details. He showed me his tablet screen displaying a completed transaction for $4,800 charged to a MasterCard ending in 7834 authorized at 6:57 a.m. Thursday morning. This credit card doesn't belong to me. Ma'am, the name on the card matches the name on our contract. Ava Johnson, this address. Someone had opened a credit card account in my name, using my personal information, then used it to authorize thousands of dollars in wedding rental equipment. I need you to stop this delivery immediately. The credit card authorization is fraudulent. Mike looked increasingly uncomfortable. Ma'am, we have completed payment authorization and signed contracts. Our crew is already here, and we have other deliveries scheduled throughout the day. 2 of his workers had begun unloading tent equipment from their trucks while we talked. White fabric metal poles and lighting fixtures were being stacked on my front lawn. I'm calling the police. Ma'am, I understand you might be stressed about the event, but canceling delivery after payment authorization would result in significant fees and potential legal action. Legal action for stopping delivery of equipment I never ordered using credit cards I never opened. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, emerged from her house across the street, clearly curious about the commercial trucks and delivery activity. Ava, dear, how exciting to see the wedding preparations beginning. Your mother mentioned what a beautiful celebration you're planning. Eleanor had contacted my neighbors directly to create community expectations about Saturday's wedding reception. Mrs. Patterson, there isn't going to be a wedding reception at my house. She looked confused. but your mother showed me pictures of the tent setup and decoration plans. She was so excited about your family reconciliation. Mike was watching this conversation with obvious concern about the conflicting information he was receiving. Ma'am, should I call our management office about this delivery dispute? Before I could answer, a third truck arrived with Bella Flora design painted on its side. The florist was arriving for a decoration coordination, apparently unaware that yesterday's delivery dispute hadn't been resolved. A woman in her 40s approached with a clipboard and a warm smile. You must be Ava. I'm Lisa from Bella Flora, here to coordinate Saturday's floral installations with the tent setup crew. I told your delivery driver yesterday that I didn't authorize any floral orders. Lisa looked confused, but Eleanor called this morning to confirm installation details. She provided payment authorization for the additional ceremony arch and reception centerpiece upgrades. Additional orders. Bunch upgraded package including ceremony backdrop, enhanced centerpieces, and bridal party boutonnieres. Total additional cost of $1,200 charged to the same card as yesterday's delivery. Eleanor had expanded the floral order after yesterday's confrontation, adding another $1,200 to the fraudulent credit charges. Lisa Eleanor Johnson has no authority to make orders or authorize payments on my behalf. But she knew detailed information about your preferences and the wedding timeline. She seemed very knowledgeable about coordination requirements. My phone rang with a call from my credit monitoring service. Ms. Johnson, this is David from Credit Alert Services. We're showing unusual activity on a new account opened in your name Monday. Multiple large charges in the past 24 hours, totaling over $6,000. I didn't open any new accounts. The account shows a MasterCard opened Monday using your personal information and this address. Recent charges include rental equipment, floral services, and catering deposits. Someone had opened a credit card account in my name specifically to fund wedding expenses, then used it to authorize thousands of dollars in vendor payments. David, this is identity theft. I need all charges disputed immediately and the account closed. We'll start the fraud investigation process, but charges that have already been authorized to vendors may be more difficult to reverse. More neighbors were emerging from their houses to watch the growing collection of commercial vehicles and equipment delivery. Mrs. Rodriguez approached with obvious curiosity. Ava, what a wonderful surprise about the wedding celebration. Your mother mentioned it would be quite the neighborhood event. Eleanor had systematically contacted neighbors to create community expectations about Saturday's reception, ensuring that cancellation would appear rude and inconsiderate to people who had been told to expect a joyful family celebration. Mrs. Rodriguez, my mother had no authority to make promises about events at my house. Mike was growing impatient with the delivery delays. Ma'am, we need to either proceed with setup or assess cancellation fees. Our crew has other installations scheduled today. How much are the cancellation fees? 50% of the total contract value plus a logistics fee for time and equipment already committed, approximately $3,000. $3,000 in cancellation fees for equipment I had never ordered or proceeding with installation that would transform my property into a wedding venue for an event I was determined to prevent. Lisa from the florist was examining my backyard through the patio doors, taking pictures and making notes about placement options for ceremony and reception decorations. This space is absolutely perfect for garden wedding photography. Eleanor wasn't exaggerating about the beautiful landscaping. My phone buzzed with a text from the catering company, Ava arriving at 2 p.m. for kitchen walkthrough as scheduled, looking forward to coordinating Saturday's Italian feast. The vendors were proceeding with their original schedules despite yesterday's protests and cancellations. Eleanor had apparently contacted each company to confirm arrangements and provide payment authorization. Mike, I need to speak with your management immediately. Of course, let me call Ted. While Mike made his call, I watched helplessly as his crew continued unloading equipment onto my property. White tent, fabric, metal framework, and electrical equipment were being organized across my front lawn like an outdoor construction project. Mrs. Patterson crossed the street to examine the tent materials with obvious excitement. "Oh, Ava, this is going to be such a beautiful setup." Eleanor showed me pictures of similar tents at other garden weddings, very elegant and romantic. "Mrs. Patterson, when did you speak with Eleanor about wedding plans?" "Yesterday evening." She stopped by to give me details about Saturday's reception timing and parking coordination. Such a thoughtful daughter-in-law, making sure neighbors were prepared for the celebration. Eleanor had conducted neighborhood outreach yesterday evening after leaving my house, creating community investment in Saturday's wedding that would make cancellation appear inconsiderate and antisocial. Mike finished his call and returned with obvious reluctance. "Ma'am, I spoke with Ted and our management team. They confirmed that payment was processed this morning and contracts are valid. However, given the confusion about authorization, they're willing to suspend setup until this afternoon to allow time for resolution." Resolution meaning what? Confirmation from you that you want the delivery to proceed, or formal cancellation with associated fees. Lisa was taking detailed measurements of my backyard while photographing potential locations for floral installations. Eleanor mentioned that ceremony seating would face the patio doors with reception dining in the center lawn area. Perfect flow from indoor ceremony space to outdoor celebration. The vendors were proceeding with detailed installation planning based on comprehensive information Eleanor had provided about space utilization and event logistics. My phone rang again, this time from the catering company. "Ava, Tony from Marcello's Catering, just confirming our 2 p.m. walkthrough appointment. Eleanor mentioned you wanted to review kitchen facilities and serving arrangements." "Tony, I canceled yesterday's appointment." "Oh, Eleanor called this morning to confirm everything was still on schedule. She seemed quite knowledgeable about your preferences for Saturday's menu and service style." "Eleanor doesn't know my preferences about anything." "I see. Well, we do need to coordinate kitchen access and equipment requirements before Saturday's service. When would be more convenient?" "There isn't going to be any catering service." Tony paused, clearly confused by the conflicting information he was receiving. "Ma'am, we have contracts and payment deposits for Italian buffet service for 200 guests. Canceling at this point would result in significant fees since food preparation has already begun." Eleanor had committed me to catering fees and cancellation penalties regardless of whether the event actually took place. As I stood in my front yard, surrounded by rental equipment, floral coordination, and vendor scheduling, I realized that Eleanor had created a scenario where canceling the wedding would cost almost as much as allowing it to proceed. Whether I cooperated or resisted, I was financially obligated for thousands of dollars in wedding expenses through systematic fraud and identity theft. But I also realized something else: I was about to provide the FBI with real-time documentation of ongoing criminal activity. Every vendor authorization Eleanor had made this morning constituted additional evidence of identity theft and fraud. Every payment processed using the fabricated credit card represented another federal crime committed in my name. She wasn't just refusing to stop her criminal behavior. She was escalating it even after being confronted with the possibility of federal prosecution. By 10 a.m., my front yard looked like a wedding vendor convention. The tent setup crew was assembling white fabric framework while the florist arranged ceremony backdrop materials and the catering coordinator examined my kitchen through the patio doors. 3 more trucks had arrived carrying tables, chairs, and lighting equipment. My neighbors were gathering on the sidewalk with obvious excitement about the elaborate preparations. Mrs. Rodriguez, Mrs. Patterson, and Mr. Jenkins from next door were taking pictures and discussing the beautiful wedding setup they expected to witness Saturday. I was documenting everything with my phone camera for the FBI interview when Eleanor's car pulled into my driveway at exactly 10:15. She emerged with Frank, Marcus, and Brittany all wearing casual clothes, as if they were arriving for a friendly family planning session, rather than to address the federal crimes they had committed. "Good morning, sweetheart," Eleanor called cheerfully, surveying the vendor activity with obvious satisfaction. "Doesn't everything look wonderful? The tent setup is even more beautiful than I imagined." Frank nodded approvingly at the equipment being assembled. "Quality vendors do quality work, worth paying for the best." Marcus was examining the tent framework with genuine excitement. "This is going to be amazing, way better than some stuffy country club reception." Brittany looked overwhelmed by the scope of activity, but pleased with the apparent progress toward their dream wedding celebration. Mike from Party Perfect approached Eleanor with his clipboard. "Mrs. Johnson, I wanted to thank you for resolving the payment authorization this morning. Everything is proceeding on schedule." "Wonderful," Eleanor replied. "I knew we could work through those minor technical difficulties." "Eleanor," I said loudly enough for all vendors to hear, "where did you get the credit card you used to authorize payment?" She looked genuinely confused by the question. "I used the family emergency card, of course." "What family emergency card?" Frank stepped forward. "We opened a shared family account for situations like this. Major family events that require coordination and financial resources." "You opened a credit card account in my name without my permission." Eleanor looked hurt by the accusation. "Ava family members help each other during important celebrations. This is your brother's wedding day." Lisa from Bella Flora approached with her camera and measuring tape. "Eleanor, I wanted to confirm placement for the ceremony arch. Should it face the patio doors, as we discussed?" "Yes, that will be perfect for the photography and guest viewing." I stared at Eleanor. "When did you discuss ceremony arch placement?" "This morning, when I called to coordinate installation timing." She had expanded the floral order without my knowledge, adding ceremony decorations to the existing reception arrangements. "How much did ceremony arch decorations cost?" Say Diane's eye. Lisa consulted her order tablet. The upgraded ceremony package was $800, bringing the total floral investment to $2,000. $2,000 in floral arrangements charged to a credit card opened in my name through identity theft. Mike was coordinating with the lighting crew about electrical requirements for evening reception entertainment. Extension cords were being run from my house to power commercial-grade sound equipment and decorative lighting. "Ma'am," one of the electricians called to me, "will need access to your main electrical panel to ensure adequate power for Saturday's equipment." "Nobody is accessing my electrical panel." Eleanor interceded smoothly. "Ava's just nervous about the technical details. I can show you where the panel is located." "You're not authorized to provide access to anything on my property." Frank stepped closer, his voice taking on a threatening tone. "Come on, Ava. These guys are just trying to do their jobs. Don't make everything more difficult than it needs to be." Marcus was taking selfies with the tent setup in the background, apparently planning to share wedding preparation excitement on social media. "Oh, this is going to be such an amazing party," he announced to anyone listening. "Family celebration done right." Tony from Marcello's Catering arrived with a van full of equipment and 2 assistants. They began unloading commercial warming trays, serving dishes, and portable refrigeration units. "Ava," Tony called warmly, "ready for our kitchen walkthrough?" "Tony, I told you yesterday that I'm not hosting this event." Eleanor stepped forward before Tony could respond. "There was some confusion yesterday about coordination details, but everything is confirmed now. Payment was processed this morning." "Eleanor, how much did you authorize for catering charges?" Tony consulted his invoice tablet. "Total catering package is $3,400. Includes Italian buffet for 200 guests, serving equipment, and coordination staff." $3,400 in catering charges added to the growing total of fraudulent expenses charged to identity theft credit cards. "Tony, the woman who authorized payment, has no connection to me or my finances. She committed identity theft to make false payment authorizations. Tony looked alarmed. Ma'am, we received valid credit card authorization this morning. If there's a payment dispute, we'll need to contact our management. Eleanor laughed dismissively. Ava, you're confusing this poor man with technical details. Family financial coordination doesn't need to be so complicated. My phone buzzed with a text from the photography service. Ava confirming tomorrow evening's equipment setup for Saturday's 8-hour wedding documentation. Where should we stage lighting and camera equipment? 8 hours of professional wedding photography that I had never authorized, charged to credit accounts I had never opened. Brittany was examining the catering equipment with obvious delight. This looks so professional, Eleanor. Thank you for finding such quality vendors. Only the best for family celebrations, Eleanor replied warmly. Frank was directing the tent crew about optimal placement for weather protection and guest comfort, speaking with authority about my property as if he owned it. Make sure that corner is secure. Don't want wind issues during the reception. The electrician approached me again with obvious frustration. Ma'am, we really need access to your electrical system to ensure safe power distribution for Saturday's equipment. There is no Saturday equipment. There is no reception happening here. Eleanor pulled the electrician aside for a private conversation, apparently providing alternative instructions about power access and setup requirements. Mike from Party Perfect was coordinating table and chair placement with the tent setup crew, creating a comprehensive floor plan for dining and dancing areas. Tables for 200 dance floor in the center gift station near the entrance, he announced to his crew. My backyard was being transformed into a professional event venue, regardless of my protests and objections. Lisa from Bella Flora was installing ceremony backdrop flowers along my patio, creating an elegant arch of white roses and greenery that would photograph beautifully during wedding vows. This is going to be stunning, she told Brittany. Perfect romantic setting for your special moment. Brittany was taking pictures of every detail with obvious joy and excitement about Saturday's celebration. Marcus was coordinating with the DJ about music equipment placement and power requirements for evening entertainment. Tyler will need space for his full setup, speakers mixing board lighting effects, really going to rock the party. Professional wedding vendors were systematically installing equipment and decorations for a major celebration based on fraudulent payment authorizations and identity theft. My phone rang with a call from Agent Lisa Chen at the FBI. Ms. Johnson, there's been a development in your case that we need to discuss immediately. I walked toward my house for privacy, leaving my family and the vendors to continue their elaborate setup. Agent Chen, what kind of development? We've been monitoring the credit account that was opened in your name. Additional charges totaling over $8,000 were processed this morning for wedding vendor services. I'm watching vendors install equipment right now based on those fraudulent authorizations. The person using your identity has escalated their criminal activity even after being informed about federal investigation. This demonstrates sophisticated planning and disregard for legal consequences. Through my window, I could see Eleanor directing vendor activities with obvious authority and satisfaction. Agent Chen, they're treating my property like they own it, running electrical equipment, installing decorations, coordinating catering services. Ms. Johnson, we need to accelerate our timeline. Can you come in this afternoon instead of tomorrow? Yes, absolutely. Bring your phone, laptop, and any documents they may have accessed. We suspect they've gained unauthorized access to your personal and business accounts. After ending the call, I returned to my backyard to find the vendors making final preparations for equipment installation and service coordination. Eleanor approached me with a satisfied smile. See how much easier everything becomes when family members work together. This is going to be the most beautiful wedding celebration. Eleanor, federal agents want to interview me this afternoon about the crimes you've committed. Her smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. Ava, there's no need to involve authorities in family wedding planning. We can work through any concerns together. Frank stepped closer, his expression turning aggressive. You're really going to destroy your brother's wedding over paperwork disagreements? I'm going to ensure that people who commit federal crimes face appropriate consequences. Marcus looked genuinely panicked. Ava, please. Brittany's family is arriving tonight. Her grandparents flew in from Arizona specifically for tomorrow's ceremony. Then you should have planned a legitimate wedding instead of building it on fraud and identity theft. Brittany was examining the vendor setup with growing concern rather than excitement. Marcus, your sister seems genuinely upset about these arrangements. Are you sure she actually agreed to host our wedding? She'll be fine once everything is set up and the celebration begins. Ava just needs time to adjust to family involvement. Eleanor nodded supportively. Sometimes people resist change even when it's positive. Family healing requires patience and understanding. The vendors were completing their setup activities while my family continued to speak as if Saturday's celebration was inevitable, regardless of my objections or the ongoing federal investigation. Tony from catering was examining my kitchen with professional assessment of space and equipment requirements for food preparation and service. This kitchen will work perfectly for coordination, good counter space, and refrigeration access. You're not using my kitchen for anything. Eleanor interceded again. Tony, don't worry about minor coordination details. Everything will be fine Saturday morning. My phone buzzed with another vendor text. Ava, this is Jessica from Wedding Photography. Arriving tomorrow at 4 p.m. for equipment setup. Looking forward to capturing Marcus and Brittany's special day. The wedding photography team expected to arrive tomorrow afternoon for equipment installation in preparation for Saturday's ceremony and reception. As I watched vendors completing installation of tents, floral decorations, and catering coordination, I realized that Eleanor had created a scenario where canceling the wedding would require dismantling thousands of dollars worth of professional equipment and disappointing dozens of people who believed they were participating in a legitimate family celebration. But I also understood something else. This was exactly the kind of evidence the FBI needed to demonstrate the scope and sophistication of the identity theft and fraud my family had committed. By noon, my backyard had been transformed into a professional wedding venue. White tents with elegant draping covered half my lawn round tables, with crisp linens were arranged for formal dining, and a small dance floor had been installed near the patio. Floral arrangements created a ceremony backdrop that would photograph beautifully, and electrical equipment was being tested for evening entertainment. My neighbors were taking pictures and videos of the elaborate setup, clearly planning to share wedding preparation excitement on social media. The local newspaper photographer, Jessica Chang, had arrived to document the heartwarming family reconciliation story that Eleanor had pitched as a community interest piece. I was preparing to leave for my FBI interview when a luxury sedan pulled into my driveway. An elderly couple emerged, followed by a woman in her 40s who was clearly helping coordinate their travel. Brittany squealed with excitement and ran to embrace the elderly couple. Grandma and Grandpa Miller, you made it. Eleanor approached with gracious hospitality. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, welcome. I'm Eleanor Marcus's mother. We're so grateful you could travel for this special celebration. Mrs. Miller, a frail woman in her 80s, examined the wedding setup with obvious delight. Oh my, this is even more beautiful than Brittany described. What an elegant garden celebration. Mr. Miller nodded approvingly. Lovely family property, perfect setting for wedding festivities. Their daughter introduced herself as Karen Miller, Brittany's aunt, who had driven them from the airport. Ava, thank you so much for opening your home for Marcus and Brittany's celebration. This setup is absolutely stunning. The genuine gratitude from elderly grandparents who had traveled across the country made the situation even more heartbreaking. They had no idea they were witnessing the results of systematic fraud and identity theft. Eleanor seized the opportunity to escalate emotional pressure. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, let me tell you about Ava's generous decision to host this celebration. After years of focusing on her education and career, she realized that family relationships are what truly matter in life. Mrs. Miller took my hands in her weathered ones. "Dear, your mother told us such beautiful stories about your successful career and how you wanted to give back to family during this special time." The fabricated narrative of my voluntary generosity and family reconciliation was being performed for witnesses who would remember my supposed kindness and community spirit. Frank was directing the photographer Jessica Chang around the property, providing quotes about family healing and the importance of supporting each other during major life celebrations. "This is what real family values look like," he announced for her interview, putting aside past disagreements to celebrate love and commitment. Jessica was taking pictures of the wedding setup while gathering quotes about family reconciliation and community celebration. The newspaper story would present Eleanor's fictional narrative as fact cementing public perception of my generous hospitality. Marcus was showing his future grandparents-in-law around the property with obvious pride in the elaborate preparations. "Ava really went all out for us. Professional vendors, elegant decorations, the works. She wanted to make sure Brittany had the perfect wedding day." Mr. Miller examined the tent setup with appreciation. "Quality craftsmanship. Your sister has excellent taste in event planning." The lies were being layered upon lies, creating a comprehensive fictional account of my enthusiastic wedding coordination and family devotion. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Chen. "Ms. Johnson, please come in immediately if possible. We've discovered additional evidence that requires urgent discussion." I needed to leave for my FBI interview, but the presence of elderly relatives and community documentation made departure feel cruel and heartless. Eleanor approached me with her most manipulative smile. "Ava, sweetheart, before you rush off to your business appointment, could you spend a few minutes with Mr. and Mrs. Miller? They're so grateful for your hospitality." She was positioning my FBI interview as a routine business meeting that was less important than greeting elderly relatives who had traveled for the wedding celebration. Mrs. Miller approached with obvious affection. "Ava, dear Brittany has told us so much about your beautiful home and generous heart. We're so blessed to witness this family healing." The genuine warmth from an innocent elderly woman made refusing her attention appear cruel and selfish, exactly as Eleanor had intended. "Mrs. Miller, I need you to understand that I didn't volunteer to host this wedding. Marcus and his parents arranged everything without my permission." She looked confused and concerned. "But dear, your mother explained how excited you were to bring the family together after years of separation." Karen Miller stepped forward protectively. "Is everything all right? You seem very stressed about tomorrow's celebration." Eleanor interceded smoothly. "Ava's just experiencing pre-event anxiety, very normal for someone hosting their first major family gathering." "Of course," Mrs. Miller said sympathetically. "Planning a wedding can be overwhelming. That's why family support is so important." Frank was speaking with Jessica Chang about the importance of family forgiveness and second chances, providing quotes that would frame any resistance to the wedding as petty grudge holding rather than legitimate response to criminal fraud. Young people sometimes need time to mature before they can appreciate family bonds, he explained for her article. "We're proud of Ava for choosing love over past disagreements." The newspaper story would present my family's criminal fraud as admirable patience with my immature independence and my eventual cooperation as personal growth toward family-centered values. Marcus was coordinating final vendor details while treating me like an enthusiastic co-host rather than an unwilling victim of identity theft. "Ava the DJ wants to confirm power requirements for tonight's equipment setup. Tyler needs to know which outlets to use for his sound system." "There is no tonight's equipment setup. There is no DJ. There is no wedding." Brittany looked genuinely distressed. "But Ava, everyone's here. My grandparents traveled across the country. All the vendors are coordinated. Everything is ready for tomorrow's celebration." The emotional manipulation was reaching peak intensity as Eleanor surrounded me with innocent victims of her elaborate lies, making refusal appear heartless and cruel. Mrs. Miller approached me with motherly concern. "Dear, you look exhausted. Wedding planning can be such hard work. Why don't you let us help with final preparations while you rest?" Eleanor beamed with satisfaction. What a wonderful suggestion! Family members supporting each other during special celebrations. My phone rang with Agent Chen calling back. "Agent Chen, I need to leave immediately, but my family has brought elderly relatives who don't understand the situation." "Ms. Johnson, this is exactly the kind of emotional manipulation we see in sophisticated fraud cases. They're using innocent third parties to pressure you into compliance." Through my window, I could see Eleanor organizing a group photo with the Miller grandparents, wedding vendors, and community members, creating visual documentation of the successful family reconciliation celebration. "Agent Chen, they've turned my property into a full wedding venue with professional photography for newspaper coverage. If I leave now, it will look like I'm abandoning elderly relatives." Which is exactly what they're counting on. Ms. Johnson, every moment you delay gives them more time to commit additional crimes using your identity. I watched Eleanor embracing Mrs. Miller while explaining the beautiful story of family healing, and daughter returning home to embrace family values over individual pursuits. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. But as I prepared to leave, Eleanor made her final, most devastating manipulation. She approached the Miller grandparents with tears in her eyes and a tremulous voice. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, I need to share something difficult with you. Frank and I have been struggling financially since our restaurant failed. We've actually sold our family home to help Marcus get started in his new life with Brittany." Mrs. Miller looked concerned and sympathetic. "Oh dear, that's quite a sacrifice." Eleanor continued with practiced vulnerability. "We've been staying in a small apartment, but it's not suitable for family gatherings. When Ava offered to host the wedding, she also invited us to move back in with her permanently. This beautiful house has room for multiple generations to live together again." My blood went cold as understanding dawned. The wedding celebration is actually a homecoming for our whole family, Eleanor announced to the growing crowd of relatives, vendors, and community members. "Frank and I are moving in with Ava to create a multi-generational household focused on family support and shared responsibilities." Frank was nodding approvingly while unloading suitcases from their car trunk. "Been looking forward to this for weeks. Ava's got plenty of space, and family should live together during the important years." Mrs. Miller clapped her hands with delight. "How wonderful! The multi-generational living is such a blessing. Ava, you're so generous to open your home to your parents." The manipulation was perfect and devastating. Eleanor had publicly announced that she and Frank were moving into my house permanently, using the wedding celebration as cover for a complete family takeover of my home and life. Karen Miller was taking pictures of Frank, unloading moving boxes, while Eleanor described the beautiful family living arrangement that would support Marcus and Brittany's new marriage. "This is exactly the kind of family cooperation that builds strong communities," Jessica Chang noted for her newspaper article. I stood in my driveway, watching strangers celebrate what they believed was my generous decision to embrace family living and shared household responsibilities, while my parents unloaded moving boxes into my home as if permanent occupancy had been prearranged and welcomed. Eleanor's final manipulation was complete. The wedding was just the opening ceremony for a total family invasion of my personal space, my financial resources, and my independent adult life. I stood in my driveway watching Eleanor and Frank unload moving boxes while innocent elderly relatives and community members celebrated what they believed was my generous invitation for multi-generational family living. The manipulation was so complete that refusing to let them move in would appear cruel and heartless to dozens of witnesses. But Eleanor had made one critical mistake in her elaborate fraud scheme. She had assumed I was the same frightened teenager who had fled home 8 years ago rather than the strategic thinker who had built a successful business and documented every detail of their criminal behavior. I pulled out my phone and activated the recording app I had been using to document vendor conversations all morning. Eleanor, I need you to explain to everyone here exactly how you arranged payment for all these wedding vendors. She looked momentarily confused by the direct question. Family members coordinate financial resources during important celebrations, sweetheart. Which specific financial resources did you use to pay for tent rental, catering, flowers, and photography services, sir? That is these. Frank stepped forward defensively. Ava, this isn't the time for accounting discussions in front of guests. Actually, this is exactly the time. Mrs. Miller, would you like to know how Eleanor paid for your granddaughter's wedding celebration? Mrs. Miller looked curious. Of course, dear. Eleanor opened credit card accounts in my name, without my permission, forged my signature on vendor contracts, and used my personal information to authorize thousands of dollars in charges I never approved. The crowd of relatives, vendors, and community members fell silent as the implications sank in. Eleanor laughed nervously. Ava family financial coordination doesn't need to be so formal. You're confusing our guests with technical details. Identity theft and fraud aren't technical details. They're federal crimes. Jessica Chang looked up from her notepad with obvious interest in this unexpected development. Karen Miller stepped closer, her expression shifting from celebration to concern. Are you saying someone used your personal information without permission to make financial commitments? That's exactly what I'm saying. Eleanor has systematically impersonated me to vendors, opened credit accounts in my name, and forged my signature on contracts worth over $10,000. Frank's expression was darkening with anger. Think carefully about what you're accusing family members of doing, Ava. I'm not accusing, I'm documenting. Agent Chen, please come outside. The crowd looked confused as FBI agent Lisa Chen emerged from the unmarked sedan that had been parked down the street for the past hour. FBI, Mrs. Miller whispered with obvious alarm. Agent Chen approached with her badge displayed and 2 additional agents following behind her. Eleanor Johnson and Frank Johnson, you're under arrest for identity theft, mail fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. Eleanor's composure cracked completely as handcuffs appeared. Ava, you can't seriously be having your own parents arrested on your brother's wedding day. I'm having criminals arrested who happen to share my DNA. Agent Chen began reading Eleanor her rights, while the second agent handcuffed Frank. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Marcus looked genuinely panicked. Ava, please, think about what you're doing. This will destroy the family permanently. The family destroyed itself when it chose to commit federal crimes rather than accept my boundaries. Brittany was crying, but this time her tears seemed more relieved than devastated. Marcus, your sister is right. You lied to me about everything. You built our entire wedding on fraud and manipulation. Agent Chen addressed the crowd of stunned witnesses. We have evidence of systematic identity theft involving fraudulent credit accounts, forged signatures on commercial contracts, and business impersonation across state lines. The financial amounts involved constitute serious federal crimes. Mrs. Miller looked genuinely heartbroken, but they seemed like such a loving family. Eleanor spoke so warmly about her daughter's success and generosity. Mrs. Miller, Eleanor has been lying about our relationship for years. We've had no contact since I left home for college. Everything she told you about my enthusiasm for this wedding was fiction. Jessica Chang was frantically taking notes as the newspaper story shifted from heartwarming family reconciliation to federal crime investigation. The vendors were watching in shock as their payment authorizations were revealed to be fraudulent. Mike from Party Perfect approached Agent Chen with obvious concern. Agent, we received valid payment authorization this morning. Are you saying those charges were fraudulent? We'll need to interview all vendors who received payment from accounts opened in Ms. Johnson's name without her permission. Tony from the catering company looked alarmed. We've already begun food preparation for Saturday's service. What happens to our cost? Agent Chen handed out business cards to each vendor representative. Our financial crimes division will work with your companies to document fraudulent transactions and coordinate restitution processes. Eleanor was being led toward the FBI vehicle while calling over her shoulder. Ava, this is a terrible mistake. Family members help each other during celebrations. This isn't criminal behavior. Using someone's identity without permission to commit fraud is the definition of criminal behavior. Frank was silent as he was placed in the second FBI vehicle, but his expression suggested he understood the seriousness of federal charges. Marcus looked genuinely lost as his wedding coordination collapsed around him. What am I supposed to tell everyone? 200 guests are expecting a celebration tomorrow. You tell them the truth, that you built your wedding plans on criminal fraud instead of legitimate arrangements. Karen Miller approached me with genuine sympathy. Ava, I'm so sorry your family put you through this. Identity theft is a terrible violation of trust. Thank you for understanding, Karen. I know this isn't what you expected when you traveled here. Mrs. Miller looked confused and sad. I don't understand how parents could do such things to their own daughter. Neither do I, Mrs. Miller, but some people see family relationships as opportunities for exploitation rather than sources of mutual support. Agent Chen returned after securing Eleanor and Frank in federal custody. Ms. Johnson, we'll need you to coordinate with vendors about equipment removal and contract cancellations, now that the fraudulent payments are documented. The tent setup crew was already beginning to dismantle equipment, while the florist documented arrangements for return processing. Jessica Chang approached with her notepad. Ava, would you like to share your side of this story for the newspaper article? The story is simple. Some people commit federal crimes when they don't get what they want. Other people choose to protect themselves and their communities by ensuring criminals face appropriate consequences. Marcus made one final attempt at manipulation. Ava, you realize this means I'll probably go to prison too. The FBI will investigate everyone involved in wedding planning. Then you should have thought about federal consequences before participating in systematic fraud. Brittany was quietly removing her engagement ring. Marcus, I can't marry someone who would lie and manipulate everyone around him to get what he wants. This isn't the man I thought I knew. Brittany, please, we can work through this. It was just wedding planning that got complicated. It was criminal fraud built on 8 years of lies about your family relationships. Agent Chen addressed the remaining crowd. We recommend that all witnesses provide contact information in case investigators need additional statements about the fraudulent activities you observed. The vendors were coordinating equipment removal while documenting financial losses from fraudulent payment authorizations. Mike from Party Perfect was directing his crew to carefully dismantle tent equipment while preserving evidence of the fraudulent setup. Ma'am, he said to me apologetically, I'm sorry your family put you through this. We had no idea the contracts and payments were fraudulent. It's not your fault, Mike. Professional criminals can be very convincing when they want to be. Tony from catering was sadly packing food preparation equipment that wouldn't be used for Saturday's canceled celebration. Such a waste. We had beautiful Italian dishes planned for the reception. Mrs. Miller approached me one final time before Karen helped her to their car. Oh dear, I hope you can find peace after this terrible experience. Family should protect and support each other, not commit crimes. Thank you, Mrs. Miller. I hope you and Mr. Miller have safe travels home. As the FBI vehicles departed with Eleanor and Frank in custody, I stood in my driveway watching vendors remove thousands of dollars worth of wedding equipment that had been installed through systematic fraud and identity theft. Marcus sat on my front steps looking defeated and lost. 8 years, he said quietly. You stayed away for 8 years and we couldn't respect that for even one day. No, you couldn't. I really thought you'd be excited to be part of my wedding once you saw how much effort we put into making it special. The effort you put into committing federal crimes, you mean? He nodded sadly. Yeah, I guess that's what we did. Brittany joined him on the steps, both of them watching their dream wedding disappear as equipment trucks departed and floral arrangements were packed for return. Marcus, I hope you understand why I can't marry someone who would do this to his own sister. I understand. Jessica Chang finished her interviews and approached me for a final quote. Ava, what message do you hope people take from this story? Setting boundaries with family isn't cruel or selfish. Sometimes it's necessary to protect not just yourself, but to prevent family members from continuing destructive patterns that ultimately hurt everyone. As the last vendor truck departed and my neighbors returned to their houses with confused expressions, I stood in my empty backyard, looking at the holes in my lawn where tent stakes had been removed and electrical equipment had been dismantled. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Chen. Ms. Johnson, excellent work documenting their criminal activity. Your evidence will ensure appropriate prosecution. Justice will be served. Justice would indeed be served. But more importantly, I had finally learned that protecting myself from family exploitation wasn't selfishness. It was self-preservation and community service. 6 months later, I sat in my therapist's office, reflecting on the dramatic changes that had followed what the local newspaper eventually called the wedding fraud case. Dr. Sarah Martinez had been helping me process not just the trauma of my family's criminal behavior, but my own complicated feelings about their consequences. How are you feeling about Eleanor and Frank's sentencing? Dr. Martinez asked. Relief mostly, 18 months in federal prison, 5 years probation, and full restitution to all victims. They'll be paying back fraudulent charges for years. The FBI investigation had revealed that my parents' criminal behavior extended far beyond wedding planning. They had opened credit accounts in my name, over several months used my business information to apply for loans, and systematically researched my professional network to create opportunities for fraud. And Marcus, 12 months in county jail, 3 years probation, and mandatory financial counseling. Turns out he was more involved in the identity theft than I initially realized. Marcus had provided my personal information to Eleanor, and Frank helped research my professional relationships and actively participated in the fraudulent vendor coordination. His role in the conspiracy was significant enough to warrant criminal charges. How do you feel about that? Sad, but not guilty. These were choices they made as adults, knowing the potential consequences. The therapy sessions had been crucial in helping me distinguish between appropriate family loyalty and enabling destructive behavior. Dr. Martinez had helped me understand that protecting others from the consequences of harmful actions ultimately enables more harm. Tell me about the positive changes you've experienced. The extended family relationships have been surprisingly healing. Aunt Patricia, Uncle Robert, and several cousins reached out after learning the truth about Eleanor's lies. They apologized for believing fabricated stories and expressed genuine interest in rebuilding authentic relationships. Patricia had been particularly supportive, explaining that she had always felt something was wrong with Eleanor's stories, but hadn't wanted to cause family conflict by questioning them. We have regular coffee meetings now, I continued, real conversations about life and work and family built on honesty instead of manipulation. What about your professional relationships? Actually stronger than before. Amanda Kingsley at the nonprofit was impressed by how I handled the crisis. She said it demonstrated integrity and crisis management skills that made her more confident in our business partnership. The Sullivan Foundation had offered me a permanent consulting contract after witnessing my professional response to personal chaos. Other clients had expressed similar confidence in my character and judgment. Jake and I expanded the business to include reputation management services for organizations dealing with internal fraud. Turns out there's significant demand for expertise in handling criminal behavior within professional relationships. The experience had taught me valuable lessons about protecting business relationships, from family manipulation lessons that proved useful for other entrepreneurs dealing with similar challenges. How has your relationship with your home changed? I love my house again. For months after the incident, I felt violated and unsafe in my own space. But with therapy and time, I've reclaimed it as my sanctuary rather than a crime scene. I had redecorated my backyard to erase memories of the fraudulent wedding setup. New landscaping, different furniture arrangements, and a small garden where the tent had been installed. The space felt peaceful and private again. What about romantic relationships? Have you been able to trust someone enough to share your space? Actually, yes. I've been dating someone wonderful for 3 months. David is a teacher who values honesty and personal boundaries. He's been incredibly supportive about my family situation. David had met me at a community volunteer event where I was helping with financial literacy education. Our shared commitment to protecting people from financial exploitation had created an immediate connection. He thinks what I did was brave, not vindictive, I continued. That perspective has been really healing. Tell me about the community response. Mixed, but mostly positive. Some people initially thought I was cruel for having my parents arrested during wedding preparations. But once the newspaper published the full investigation results, community opinion shifted toward support for holding people accountable for criminal behavior. The Valley Tribune's follow-up article had featured interviews with other identity theft victims and financial crime experts who explained the serious community impact of family-based fraud. Jessica Chang had won a regional journalism award for her comprehensive coverage of the case. Several community members have asked me to speak at financial literacy workshops about family-based identity theft. Turns out it's more common than people realize. How do those speaking engagements feel? Empowering. Sharing my experience helps other people recognize warning signs and protect themselves from similar exploitation. The workshops had been particularly popular with young adults and elderly community members, two demographics frequently targeted by family-based financial crimes. What's your relationship with forgiveness in this situation? I've learned that forgiveness doesn't require accepting ongoing abuse or pretending that harmful behavior wasn't really harmful. I can forgive my family for their childhood treatment and still protect myself from their continued criminal behavior. This had been the most challenging concept to process in therapy. Dr. Martinez had helped me understand that healthy forgiveness includes appropriate boundaries and consequences. I hope they get the help they need during their prison sentences and probation, but I also hope they understand that their choices permanently changed our family relationships. Do you have any contact with them now? None. They're prohibited from contacting me as part of their probation terms, and I've made it clear through their attorneys that I'm not interested in reconciliation efforts. Eleanor had attempted to send letters through mutual relatives seeking forgiveness and requesting family reunification. I had declined to read them or respond. That decision feels healthy rather than cruel now, I continued. Some people demonstrate through their actions that they can't be trusted with access to your life. What about Brittany? She sent a beautiful thank you note 6 weeks after the arrests. She said discovering Marcus's capacity for elaborate deception saved her from a marriage built on lies. She moved back to Arizona and is engaged to someone she describes as honest and straightforward. Brittany had provided testimony to federal investigators about Marcus's lies and manipulation throughout their relationship. Her cooperation had been valuable in documenting the scope of his criminal involvement. She included a picture from her new engagement. She looks genuinely happy rather than stressed and overwhelmed. How do you think about Marcus now? As someone I used to know who made terrible choices that revealed his true character, I feel sad about losing the brother I thought I had, but I've accepted that person may never have existed. The Marcus who could lie convincingly for months while orchestrating systematic fraud wasn't someone I could maintain a relationship with, regardless of shared childhood history. What's next for you? Continued therapy, growing my business, deepening my relationship with David, and maintaining the healthy family connections I've rebuilt with extended relatives. I had also begun volunteering with a nonprofit that provided legal assistance to identity theft victims, using my experience to help others navigate federal investigations and restitution processes. I'm considering writing a book about family-based financial crimes. There aren't enough resources for people dealing with fraud committed by relatives. How would you describe the overall impact of this experience on your life? Initially devastating, but ultimately liberating. For 8 years, I carried guilt about cutting my family from my life. I wondered if I had been too harsh or unforgiving. Now I understand that my instincts were correct. Staying away from them wasn't cruel or immature. It was necessary self-protection. The validation that my childhood perceptions of their manipulative behavior had been accurate was profoundly healing. I've also learned that setting boundaries isn't about punishment. It's about creating safe space for authentic relationships to develop. What would you tell someone facing a similar situation? Trust your instincts about family members who consistently disregard your boundaries. Document everything if you suspect fraudulent behavior. Don't let guilt about family loyalty prevent you from protecting yourself and your community from criminal activity. I had learned that enabling destructive behavior by avoiding consequences ultimately harms everyone involved, including the person engaging in harmful actions. Most importantly, understand that family relationships should enhance your life rather than requiring constant crisis management and emotional damage control. Any final reflections? I'm grateful for the experience despite the trauma. It taught me that justice and healing are possible even in the most manipulative family situations. It also showed me that there are many people in the world who value honesty and integrity over family obligation and social appearances. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Hope therapy went well today. Looking forward to dinner at our place tonight. I'm making your favorite pasta dish. Our place. 6 months ago, I couldn't have imagined sharing my space with anyone again. Now, David had his own key, and we were discussing moving in together officially. Dr. Martinez, I think I'm ready to trust again, not naively, but with appropriate boundaries and clear communication about expectations. That sounds like tremendous growth, Ava. As I left therapy and drove toward the home I had fought so hard to protect, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, complete peace with my family choices. Setting boundaries hadn't been cruel, it had been necessary. Refusing to enable criminal behavior hadn't been vindictive. It had been community protection. Choosing authentic relationships over family obligation hadn't been selfish. It had been healthy. For the first time in my adult life, I was free from guilt about family estrangement. I had protected not just myself, but prevented my family from continuing patterns of manipulation and exploitation that ultimately damaged everyone they touched. That evening, as David and I cooked dinner together in my peaceful kitchen, I reflected on how much my life had changed. My home was my sanctuary again. My business was thriving with clients who respected my integrity. My extended family relationships were built on honesty rather than manipulation. You know what I realized today? I told David as we arranged plates on my dining room table. What's that? Family isn't about shared DNA or childhood history. Family is about people who consistently treat you with respect, support your growth, and enhance your life rather than creating constant crisis and drama. David smiled as he lit candles for our dinner. I couldn't agree more. As we sat down to eat, I looked around my dining room where wedding centerpieces had once cluttered every surface, where vendors had coordinated fraudulent services, where federal agents had documented systematic criminal behavior. Now it was simply my home again, shared with someone who valued honesty and boundaries as much as I did. The nightmare was over, the healing had begun, and justice had indeed been served. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who didn't respect your choices or independence? How did you handle the guilt and social pressure that often comes with protecting yourself from family manipulations? If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges, and share with anyone who might need to hear that setting boundaries is healthy, not selfish. Thank you for listening, and remember, you have the right to protect your peace, your home, and your financial security from anyone who would exploit family relationships for personal gain. Real family enhances your life rather than requiring constant crisis management.